Chapter 431. Insanely spicy. Sure, please wait a moment. A mysterious smile appeared on Meg's face. You're the one who's asking for it. I'll admit defeat if I don't make you cry today. There's also fish. I love fish. I want a large spicy grilled fish as well, and I want the insanely spicy grilled fish as well. This drawing looks real. Did you use magic to turn all of these dishes into drawings? Have it asked as he flipped through the menu. I hired an amateur artist to draw this, Meg replied with a smile. The system had already upgraded all of the menus to include pictures. Host. Please explain what an amateur artist is. Even if this wasn't drawn by the system's drawing skills are at least on a professional level. The system's indignant voice sounded, but Meg ignored it. I want a Yangzhou fried rice. I want a braised chicken and rice. I love chicken. Everyone else also began to place their orders. Meg turned and went into the restaurant to cook, while Yabamiya brought out one dish after another. If it's insanely spicy, do you want to know how to cook 2 insanely spicy dishes? Meg took a glance at Fox before mincing the insanely spicy pepper in his hand. Everyone was no longer in the mood to continue their discussion. All of them looked toward the kitchen with anticipation in their eyes as they waited for the dishes to be served. Uncle Jinx, you broke the chair. You have to pay for it, Amy reminded Jinx. Jinx looked back at the chair that had already been reduced to rubble, and scratched his head sheepishly as he said, this Rigiamo was too delicious, and I couldn't help myself. I'll pay for this chair. Here are 10 Rigiamos for you. Do you want me to get you a new chair? Yabamiya made her way over to Jinx with a slightly nervous expression on her face as she carried a tray of Rigiamos over to him. No need, I'll eat standing up so I don't break the chair again. Jinx shook his head with a smile before picking up a Rigiamo. He then turned to Yabamiya with a curious expression, and asked, Little girl, what dragon are you? Why are you working as a waiter here? Dragons are a proud race. No matter how delicious the food in this restaurant is, we shouldn't serve others. Yabamiya opened her mouth before lowering her head in a dejected manner. I don't know what kind of dragon I am. Is that so? Jinx looked at Yabamiya in confusion. Yabamiya looked up at Jinx with a serious expression and said, but I like my current job. This job makes me proud, and it doesn't make me feel inferior. This is the life and job that I like. A hint of surprise appeared on Jinx's face at the sight of the confidence and pride in Yabamiya's eyes. Due to their origins, even the golden dragon half-humans on Dragon Island would have a sense of inferiority complex. However, this little girl gave him a sense of confidence, a sense of pride that was buried deep within her heart. I hope you will never lose your pride and confidence. I wish you good luck. He put the Rigiamo in his hand into his mouth and took a big bite, immersing himself in the delicious taste of the Rigiamo. I will. Yabamiya nodded in a soft voice, as if she were replying to Jinx, but also as if she were talking to herself. She then turned and walked into the kitchen. Here's your insanely spicy grilled fish. Yabamiya soon returned with a large grilled fish, and gently placed it in front of Fox. The massive grilled fish was covered in a bright red sauce, and there was a spicy aroma mixed with the aroma of the fish. Just a single whiff of it was enough to make one's throat burn. This smell. Why is the smell of the chili in this restaurant so rich? Just the smell alone is so pungent. It seems to be different from the chili in other restaurants. Fox narrowed his eyes. He had lived in Chaos City for many years, so he was quite familiar with human food. In fact, he was quite fond of spicy food, which was why he had chosen the insanely spicy grilled fish. However, it appeared that the chili in this fish was a little different. At the very least, this level of spiciness was something that he had never seen before. Of course, the aroma of the fish was also something that he had never smelled before. The combination of these two flavors was extremely alluring, and he couldn't help but pick up his chopsticks. A frost dragon eating the insanely spicy grilled fish is probably going to be dehydrated. Michael looked at the grilled fish in front of Fox, and shook his head with a smile. Meg hadn't given any indication of the level of insanely spicy grilled fish's insanely spicy grilled fish, so it appeared that he was taking revenge for what had happened at the entrance of the restaurant. This fish doesn't look ordinary. Just smelling this spicy smell makes me feel like my blood is boiling. Havid looked at the spicy grilled fish that Sally had just brought to him, and he couldn't help but gulp. His skin began to turn red, and it looked as if flames were going to erupt from his body at any moment. No, I have to move my chair away this time. Otherwise, I'm going to have to pay for it again. Havid picked up his chopsticks, and he didn't forget to move his chair away. He had already ascertained that even though this restaurant was opened by humans, the food here had some special effects that even giant dragons like him couldn't resist. As a giant dragon, he was indeed quite poor, and due to his poverty, he valued things like money more than anything else. Even though the dragon race would be footing the bill for this trip, there was no guarantee that the dragon race would pay for the broken chair. Both of them picked up a piece of fish with their chopsticks almost at the exact same moment. Arg! Roar! A howl of agony and an excited roar erupted almost at the exact same moment. Chapter 432. Phew! After finishing the last piece of fish, Fox lay sprawled on the table with his entire body soaked in sweat. He felt as if all of his energy had been sapped away, and he couldn't even hold on to his chopsticks anymore. He was like a salted fish that had lost all of its dreams. How could this flavor be so impactful? I can't control myself. Fox raised his head to look at Meg, who was standing at the entrance of the kitchen with a smile on his face. His eyes narrowed slightly as he murmured to himself, could it be that this guy spiked this dish to exact revenge for what happened in front of the restaurant? In any case, Fox felt as if he were completely immobilized. Even when he was in battle, he had never felt as powerless as he was right now. Double insanely spicy. Most people won't be able to handle it, and most dragons won't be able to handle it either. Meg looked at the tear-stained Fox with a smile on his face, and he was in a very good mood. He didn't force him to eat it, he was the one who had finished it, so there was no way he would be blamed for it. Wow! This is so delicious. Give me another large spicy grilled fish. I want the insanely spicy version again. If only I could get you a barrel of beer. Do you sell any beer here, boss? Havid slammed his chopsticks onto the table with an excited expression as he turned to Meg. My apologies, but the restaurant doesn't sell any beer at the moment. Meg shook his head. He was actually quite supportive of the idea of pairing grilled fish with beer, but the system hadn't given him the recipe yet. I see. That's a pity. Havid was a little disappointed, but his eyes immediately lit up as he glanced at the menu beside him. By the way, I saw that ice cream on the menu. Is it made from ice? Can you give me one? Ice cream isn't made from ice, but it is. There are 4 flavors to choose from. What flavor would you like? Meg shook his head as he looked at Havid, who was still engulfed in flames. Just the thought of seeing a huge man on fire eating ice cream was extremely impactful. Any flavor is fine. I just want to have some ice to soothe my throat before having a spicy grilled fish, Havid replied with a nonchalant wave of his hand. Okay, please wait a moment. Meg nodded and turned to enter the kitchen. Blueberry ice cream, please enjoy. Yabamiya quickly made his way over to Havid with an ice cream cone in hand. This is ice cream. It looks a little small, and I can finish it in one bite, but it really is iced. Havid accepted the ice cream before inspecting it. Scorching temperatures swept through the air, and the two ice cream balls that were stacked on top of each other immediately melted. "They're that weak?" Havid raised an eyebrow as he prepared to bite off one of the balls. "Uncle Pyro, you can't eat ice cream like that. You have to lick it. If you eat it with big bites, you won't be able to taste the delicious flavor of the ice cream," Amy hurriedly warned. "Is that so?" Havid was a little skeptical, but he still obediently stuck out his tongue to lick the melting ice cream. This feeling. Havid's eyes widened as the snow-like ice cream slowly melted on his tongue. The pleasant sensation of the ice cream slowly extinguished the scorching heat brought about by the spicy grilled fish, and a sweet and sour sensation swept through his body like a gentle breeze, making him feel extremely comfortable, and he involuntarily closed his eyes. He saw a petite amethyst dragon resting on a cliff. She raised her proud neck and let out a soft chant with her eyes half closed. Her voice was so cute and enchanting. Even if it was just a meaningless chant, he was still intoxicated. After that, he accidentally made a sound, and she was roused from her sleep. She turned around to look at him with a hint of surprise and wariness in her eyes before flying away. That was the first and only time they had met. He didn't get a chance to ask for her name, nor did he know where she lived, but the image of that purple figure singing with her head held high was etched deeply into his heart. In that instant, he suddenly understood what that feeling was. Perhaps this was what they called love, or perhaps it was what humans often referred to as love at first sight. "Uncle Pyro, your ice cream is melting," Amy reminded. Havid hurriedly opened his eyes and licked the ice cream that was about to drip off. He enjoyed the sweet and sour flavor spreading through his mouth as he licked the ice cream with a blissful expression. He turned to Amy with a smile and said, "You're absolutely right, little girl. Licking the ice cream is the correct way to eat it, it's so delicious. Even though she's in Purple Crystal Dragon, perhaps I can visit her on Purple Crystal Island and ask for her name when I get back. At the very least, I won't have any regrets." Havid thought to himself as he licked the ice cream, and a faint blush appeared on his face. "Uncle Pyro looks really cute eating ice cream. Father, can Amy have some ice cream as well?" Amy turned to Meg as she asked. "Of course. What flavor would Amy like?" Meg nodded with a smile. He looked at Havid, whose entire body was engulfed in flames, but he was carefully licking the ice cream in his hand. It was indeed quite an adorable sight. "Vanilla." "Amy hasn't had vanilla ice cream before," Amy replied in a matter-of-fact manner. "All right, I'll make it for you." Meg patted Amy's head with a smile before entering the restaurant. Everyone was immersed in the delicious food, and they enjoyed an unprecedented feast. Demons and giant dragons weren't proficient in cooking, and most of the time, they didn't even have the concept of cooking. However, the food that Meg had made today had completely upended their worldview. It turned out that food could become so delicious after being cooked. It was completely different from eating it raw. Burp, a burp sounded in the dining hall. Then, as if it was contagious, the entire dining hall was filled with burps. Even the two civil officials in charge of recording were burping with satisfaction while rubbing their round bellies. "City Lord Michael, if the conference continues tomorrow, will it still be held in this restaurant?" Dracula asked. Everyone else also turned to Michael upon hearing that. Chapter 433. Everyone turned to Meg in unison. Before anyone had a chance to say anything, Meg had already declined with a smile, "My apologies, but the restaurant will be open as usual tomorrow. We won't be providing reservation services. Boss, we'll still pay you even if the restaurant is open as usual. There are only a few of us here, and it'll be much easier for us to serve so many customers compared to you. We'll be reserving the entire restaurant for the entire day tomorrow." "That's settled then." Jinx looked at Meg with a determined expression. My apologies, but the restaurant doesn't provide reservation services during normal business hours. This is a rule of the restaurant, and it's also a promise to our customers. If you'd like to continue eating the restaurant's food, you can come back during business hours tomorrow. Meg declined with a polite smile. He then glanced at the clock on the wall and said, "Also, the reservation period for today is almost over. If there's anything else you'd like to order, you can continue to order. The restaurant will be closed at 9 p.m. sharp." Ha! Everyone turned to Meg with peculiar expressions. They didn't think that Meg would refuse their request to reserve the entire restaurant. It appeared that he wasn't going to negotiate at all. Furthermore, he was going to kick them out. "I'd like another Yangzhou fried rice and a savory tofu pudding," Dracula said as he glanced at the clock on the wall. It was already 8:40 a.m. "I'd like another spicy grilled fish. Make it super spicy this time. I can't stand the insanely spicy grilled fish." Burp. Everyone burped as they ordered their food. Although they felt full, it would be cruel to not eat a little when the opportunity to eat such delicious food was right in front of them. "All right, please wait a moment." Meg nodded with a smile. He turned around and went into the kitchen. He glanced sideways at the two parties who were facing each other again at the dining table. The smile on his face grew wider as he thought to himself, "It's time to make the final decision, right?" Burp. "Let's settle this. We demons don't need any compensation from you, and don't expect us to apologize to you either. Both parties will leave that island, and neither of us will occupy it. We'll go back to our homes and do whatever we want. Then, make an announcement to the public, saying that we fought to a draw, and no one won. Then, it will end like this." Dracula burped. He looked at the three giant dragons sitting opposite him, and said, "Let's have some free time in Chaos City for the next few days. It's not easy to come here, and it's so boring to spend every day with you guys. I'll go and look at the pretty ladies on the streets before coming to Mamie's for delicious food. That's the life I want. How can the meeting between the two races be so trifling? Moreover, the colossal dragon tribe has always had the upper hand in this battle. How can there be a tie? This matter, Fox struggled to sit up and spoke in a determined tone. "I agree. Let's sign the document tomorrow. I have some urgent matters to attend to. I think Dracula's suggestion and conditions are reasonable, so I can accept it." Havid raised his hand as he cut off Fox's words. "If we can't hold the meeting at Mamie's, then we won't be able to eat delicious Ruggiemo. That's really unfortunate, so I agree with Dracula's suggestion. Let's end this meeting here. The issue has been resolved, and our giant dragon warriors can go back and rest." Jinx also raised his hand. He looked at Fox with a dark expression and said, "Fox, we agreed that if there were any disagreements among us, then we would have to vote. Now, it's 2-1, so it's decided. You're being irresponsible toward the dragon race. I'm going to announce this to the public. I'd like to see how you're going to explain this to the public." Fox was fuming with rage as he pointed at Havid and Jinx with trembling fingers. "Fox, you might have a big mouth, but you have to remember that we have two mouths. Do you think they'll believe you or us? Don't think that we don't know what you're thinking. The Frost Dragon race has indeed contributed a lot in this war, but for the dragon race, ending this war is the best choice." Havid looked at Fox with a serious expression. Fox took a meaningful glance at Havid and Jinx, and even though he was a little reluctant, he still clenched his fists and didn't say anything. As expected, Mr. Mac really is something else. If it weren't for the fact that I don't want Chaos City to lose its best restaurant, I would have poached him to become a member of the think tank no matter how much it costs. A smile appeared on Michael's face, and he leaned back comfortably in his chair as he listened to the two sides enter the final stage of the negotiation. This meeting was the most efficient one that he had ever hosted, and it could be used as a model. All he had to do was change the location of the meeting. The two officials from the City Lord's castle had just finished their meal and were about to take a break, but they quickly pulled out a pen and paper to record the contents of the meeting. They didn't think that the meeting would come to a conclusion so quickly. During this meeting, Dicus, who had been serving at the side, was also very surprised. He looked at Mag in the kitchen, and a hint of admiration appeared on his face. Rather than saying that the City Lord was the one hosting the meeting, the person who was truly guiding the progress of the meeting was actually Meg, who had disrupted the pace of the meeting with a few dishes. When the City Lord agreed to Meg's conditions the day before, and even postponed the meeting until the evening, Dicus didn't believe that Meg would be able to contribute to the meeting. However, it seemed that all of the City Lord's expectations had been fulfilled, and the meeting was concluded in a single day. There was no one else in the City Lord's castle who could do a better job than Meg. Both parties clearly had a plan in mind, so after entering the negotiation stage, things progressed very smoothly. After a few minor discrepancies were resolved, they basically reached a consensus, and all they had to do was arrange for the documents to be signed the next day. I heard that the meeting was going to be very troublesome, but it looks like it's a lot easier than I thought. Dracula adjusted his clothes with a relaxed expression. I think so too. Demons are more straightforward than I thought. Even though we'll inevitably have to fight in the future, we still had a good time eating together today. Jinx nodded, and everyone burst into laughter. The final dishes were served one after another, and everyone got up to leave after eating. Fox had recovered some of his strength, and he walked out of the restaurant in a rather awkward manner. When he reached the door, he turned back to look at the restaurant's signboard, and murmured to himself with a sinister expression, "Just you wait. I'll make you pay for the humiliation I've suffered today tenfold someday." Chapter 434. Fox, Jinx of the Golden Dragon Tribe, Habit of the Fire Dragon Tribe, and a Demon. I didn't think that the meeting would be held at Mamie's. Outside the restaurant, a figure was hiding behind a large tree. Elizabeth was a little surprised to see everyone emerge from the restaurant. Fox looks like he has his eyes on this restaurant. That half-dragon girl by the name of Yabamiya is in this restaurant. Could it be that Fox has his eyes on her? Elizabeth's brows furrowed. She didn't know how she had ended up here, but she couldn't help but think of Yabamiya at the sight of this restaurant. It shouldn't be her. There was no reaction after our blood came into contact with each other, nor was there any reaction from the Golden Dragon origin. However, if Fox has his eyes on him, then perhaps I can keep an eye on him and see what he's up to. Elizabeth shook her head. She hesitated momentarily as Fox reluctantly drew a spell formation before departing. Her eyes then lit up as she thought to herself, Fox seems to be very feeble right now. Perhaps this is my only chance to infiltrate his place. I might be able to find more information about my father there. A huge white snowflake appeared beneath Elizabeth's feet, and she disappeared on the spot amid a flash of white light. After bidding farewell to all of the guests, Sally and Yabamiya also left after cleaning up the restaurant. Meg closed the door of the restaurant before carefully carrying the two sleeping little ones upstairs. Phew. What a fulfilling day. Meg looked at the adorable little ones in bed, and gently stroked their little nose. A sense of exhaustion welled up in his heart as he picked up his bathrobe and made his way to the bathroom. After soaking in the large bathtub, Meg closed his eyes as he asked internally, "System, I've already obtained the venue, so the mission should be a success, right? The lease contract has not been signed yet, so you don't have the right to use the space in front of the restaurant, so the mission is not yet complete," the system replied in a serious voice. "All right, then I'll wait for tomorrow." Meg didn't really care. He wasn't in a hurry anyway, so he could afford to wait for a day. "By the way, system, what level do you think my current strength should be?" Meg suddenly asked after soaking for a while. The host's current physical condition is quite complicated. His physical fitness is only at the level of an ordinary person. His strength is still some distance away from that of a level 1 knight. His swordsmanship is close to that of a level 4 knight. His speed is at the level of a level 2 knight. His overall strength is at the peak of a level 2 knight. In a short distance, his strength can reach the level of a level 4 knight. The system was silent for a while before giving a detailed evaluation. Meg pondered for a moment and asked, "Can we understand it this way? You can definitely win against a level 2, you can fight a level 3, but you may not necessarily win. If you encounter a level 4, you have no chance of winning unless you are within a sword's distance." The host's comprehension ability is still not bad. If you don't want to be casually killed by others, it's better to keep a low profile when you encounter an opponent of level 3 and above, the system replied. "I'm just a chef. This identity is enough to keep a low profile. Moreover, the more famous I am, the less people will associate me with Meg Alex, and they won't think that I have powerful strength." Meg raised his head comfortably, and a smile appeared on his face as he said, "A person, to be able to do something to the extreme, he needs to devote his heart and soul to it. When he practiced his swordsmanship to the extreme, no one would believe that his hands would be able to pick up a kitchen knife and a spoon, and make all kinds of mouth-watering delicacies. This is my true protective color. Luna, it's already so late. Why don't you sleep at my place tonight? I'll serve you in bed." Vivian held Luna's hand in the city lord's mansion, and said with a smile. "No, I still have classes tomorrow." Luna shook her head, and looked at Vivian exasperatedly as she said, "Moreover, you've just recovered a little recently. You need to rest well. Once you've completely recovered, you can eat whatever you want and do whatever you want. Don't run around anymore. TSK, TSK. You used to hug me and call me sweetie, but now you're pushing me away. Tell me, do you have another man outside?" Vivian refused to let go of Luna's hand. She narrowed her eyes and sized up Luna for a while with an expression as if she had seen through everything. "I say, don't tell me you've really fallen for Mr. Mac." Just now, whenever he was mentioned, your eyes would light up. Although he's quite handsome, he's quite tall, and his cooking is delicious. He has a gentle personality, a kind heart, and a good conversational style. His IQ and EQ are both very high, and his restaurant business is doing so well, so he must be making a lot of money. If that's the case, he's a man that I can't resist at all, right? You're lying. How could I possibly fall for Mr. Meg? I just admire his personality and his cooking. I don't have any other thoughts." Luna chuckled as she slapped the back of Vivian's hand. "Really?" Vivian stared at Luna for a while in disbelief. After confirming that she didn't see anything strange, she smiled, and said, "If you don't, then forget it. What a pity. If you become the lady boss, then I'll be able to eat and drink for free every day, and I'll even be able to eat a second helping of tofu pudding. In your dreams. I still want to eat a second helping of tofu pudding." Luna flicked Vivian's forehead, and let go of her hand. "All right, I'm going back now. It'll be difficult to travel when it's dark. Don't worry. I've already told the coachman to take you back. Miss Luna is so beautiful, I don't want to leave you alone on the streets." Vivian smiled as she held on to Luna's hand, and walked out. "Luna, you're the young mistress of the Ferd family. You can't just fall in love with anyone. Only I am worthy of you." Vivian lifted the curtains of the carriage as she walked Luna into the carriage. She stood on her tiptoes as she looked at Luna with a smile. "Stop joking around. When you get better, I think Uncle City Lord will start picking a husband for you," Luna said snappily with a smile. "If that's the case, then I'd rather never recover. I'll just go to Mr. Mac's restaurant and eat a grilled fish to prolong my life. Vivian clasped a hand over her heart with a pained expression. That's nonsense. Luna glared at Vivian before stroking Vivian's hair with a sympathetic expression. A sweet smile appeared on her face as she said, "All right, I don't have any classes in the afternoon on Tuesday, so I'll have spicy grilled fish with you tonight." "You said it yourself. I'll come pick you up." Vivian immediately came to her senses. She slapped the shaft of the carriage and said, "Gary, take Miss Luna back to her dormitory, and don't stop at the entrance of the school. Make sure she goes upstairs before you come back." "Yes, young mistress," the middle-aged coachman replied before slowly driving the carriage away. Chapter 435. The next morning, Meg woke up early to prepare ingredients. He then woke Amy up for breakfast before taking her to Chaos School to attend Crassus' class. "Teacher Crassus, can I add this purple crystal to my wand?" Amy asked as soon as she saw Crassus after entering the magic lab. She opened her little hand to reveal a small purple crystal. "This is just an ordinary purple crystal. We added the eye of a 9th-tier magic beast, purple gold flaming bird, to your wand. You'll be able to see everything within a radius of 5 kilometers through its projection. It's much more beautiful than this little crystal." Crassus shook his head with a smile as he placed the little crystal back into Amy's hand. He smiled and said, "The wand is almost complete. I can give it to Amy tonight. But this isn't an ordinary purple crystal. This is the most precious thing that Jessica gave to Amy from her father." Amy looked up at Crassus with a serious expression. Crassus looked into Amy's eye for a while, and the benevolent smile on his face became even more pronounced. He patted her head, and nodded with a smile as he said, "All right, then I'll add this precious crystal to your wand as well." "Thank you, Master Crassus," Amy yelled with elation. She then turned to Meg, and asked, "Father, would Jessica be very happy to see this?" "I think so." Meg nodded with a smile as he turned to Crassus with gratitude in his eyes. Crassus put away the purple crystal with a smile, and said, "Arthur should be arriving at Chaos City today, and he'll be accompanied by some little guys from the Magus Tower. They're clearly here to congratulate me on accepting a disciple, but those old farts are definitely up to no good. They're most likely here to stir up trouble and challenge little Amy." "Challenge me? Master Crassus, are you saying that a bad guy wants to fight with Amy?" Amy looked at Crassus curiously. "Lord Crassus, Amy has just started learning magic. She won't be in danger if she encounters a powerful magician, right?" Meg was also a little worried. It seemed that Crassus wasn't very popular in the Magus Tower. Even when he was recruiting disciples, there were people who came to cause trouble. "You don't have to worry about that. If those old fogies still had any sense of shame, they wouldn't have sent their second-generation disciples here. Otherwise, the Magus Tower would be humiliated on the entire continent. As for those kids, they can do whatever they want. Amy may have only studied magic for a few weeks, but she's still my disciple, so she'll have no problem taking care of them." Crassus waved his hand nonchalantly. "Don't worry, Father, Amy will definitely defeat them." Amy also looked at Meg with a serious expression, and her little face was filled with confidence. "I'm sure Amy will be able to do it." Meg nodded with a smile. Seeing as Crassus had said so, he was relieved. With him by their side, they wouldn't be able to cause any trouble. After exiting the Magic Academy, Meg bumped into Hader as soon as he reached the school gate. "What a coincidence, Mr. Meg. I didn't think that we'd meet again. I was going to visit you today, but I didn't think that I'd run into you here. Do you have time? I have a few questions I'd like to discuss with you about that steam engine." Hader's eyes lit up at the sight of Meg, and he made his way over to him. "My apologies, Principal Hader, but I have to go back to cook now, so I don't have time to discuss things with you. If you have any questions, perhaps you can come by when the restaurant is closed. Even though I might not be able to provide any useful ideas, I'd still like to hear from you. Meg smiled as he looked at Heidel, whose hair was a little disheveled. It was quite clear that he hadn't slept well during this period of time as his eyes were quite bloodshot. I see. All right, I won't disturb your business, Mr. Meg. I don't have any classes in the afternoon, so I'll come by your restaurant in the afternoon. Havid nodded with a smile and didn't insist. All right, goodbye. Meg nodded before departing from the school. He rode his bicycle slowly toward the restaurant. The Aden Square wasn't very lively in the morning. Many of the shops along the street were still closed, and the people on the street were either walking quickly with breakfast in their hands, or taking a nap as they walked. The square was paved with gray marble, and it shimmered under the morning sun. The evergreen trees planted in the square were still full of vitality, and hadn't withered in the face of the arrival of autumn. Everything was peaceful and tranquil. It's completely different from the alternate world that I envisioned when I was a child, but it's not bad. A smile appeared on Meg's face as he occasionally greeted the customers who recognized him along the way. Meg stopped his bicycle in front of the restaurant, and greeted the long line of customers. Aside from Yabamiya and Sally, there was also Dikis, who was holding a document in his hand. Mr. Meg, I've been ordered by the city lord to bring you the lease contract. After you sign this contract, you'll have the right to use the empty space in front of the restaurant. Dikis looked at Meg with a smile, and his gaze lingered on the bicycle for a while. All right, please come in, Mr. Dikis. Meg opened the door with a smile, and allowed Dikis to enter first. He didn't think that the city lord's castle would be so efficient as to deliver the contract so early in the morning. Mr. Mack is renting the empty space in front of the restaurant. Is he planning to expand the restaurant? He's not planning to open an outdoor restaurant, is he? Isn't it a little strange to eat on the street? What's wrong with that? As long as I can eat Mr. Mack's food, I'm willing to squat in front of the restaurant. Speaking of which, isn't the point that Mr. Mack managed to rent the empty space in the Aden Square from the city lord's castle? That's something that has never happened before. Mr. Mack is indeed not an ordinary person. The customers in front of the restaurant were all discussing animatedly, and they were all curious about what Meg was planning to do. Boss, are you really planning to open an outdoor restaurant? Are you really going to rent the empty space in front of the city lord's castle just because I mentioned it a few days ago? Yabamiya looked at Meg, who was parking his bicycle, and her eyes were filled with gratitude. Chapter 436. We'll keep it a secret. Meg nodded with a smile as he took the document from Dikis' hands and began to read it carefully. The content of the document was actually very simple. It clearly stated the responsibilities of both parties, as well as the area that Mamis could use, as well as the scope of the business license, the restaurant. Apart from that, there was also a confidentiality agreement and a 3-year lease contract, with a rent of 1 copper coin per year. Even friendship prices weren't that exaggerated. It could be said that Mamis could use the restaurant for free. There were no problems with the contract, so Meg signed it right away. Mr. Meg's performance last night was very impressive. If you were a politician, you would definitely be able to control the entire situation. Dikis put away the document, and looked at Meg with a sincere expression. I'm just a chef. Meg shook his head with a smile. He looked at Dikis, and said, the restaurant is about to open for business. Would you like to return to the city lord's castle now, or do you want to have breakfast first? I came here on an empty stomach this morning. Dikis smiled. All right, please take a seat and rest for a while. The restaurant will be open for business soon. Meg nodded with a smile. By the way, the City Lord's Castle's finance department has to apply for the reservation fee before they can send the money over to Mr. Mac. It should be sent over today, Dicus added. All right. Meg nodded with a smile. He wasn't worried that the City Lord's Castle would go back on their word. Furthermore, he didn't feel guilty about accepting the 300,000 copper coins. He had put in a lot of effort and thought to promote the success of the meeting last night. At 7:30, Meg opened the restaurant's doors with a smile, and said, "Welcome, the restaurant has released a new ice cream today. There are 4 flavors to choose from, so feel free to give it a try. However, the ice cream is cold, so it's not suitable for eating on an empty stomach. I suggest that you eat it after breakfast. Also, each person is limited to 2 per meal." Another new product. Mr. Mac is so awesome, the speed at which he's releasing new products is incredible. I don't know what ice cream is, but I've decided to order one first. Mr. Mac's products have never been disappointed. The eyes of the customers in the line all lit up upon hearing this, and they discussed among themselves as they walked in. Mr. Mac. Long time no see. A tall figure walked over and looked at Meg with a silly smile. It was Helge, who had not been here for a long time. Helge followed behind him. How's your hand? Meg asked concernedly as he looked at Helge's arm, which was hanging around his neck with a piece of wood and cloth. Helge hadn't come back since the last internal conflict. He had heard from Hebeng that the war was over and that Helge had led his people to victory. He didn't expect that he would still be injured. It's nothing. It's just a small problem. Helge shook his head with a silly smile. He was still not fluent in the common language of the continent. He glanced around the restaurant as if he was looking for something. Amy went to Chaos School for lessons, and she mentioned you a few days ago. She'll be very happy to know that you're back. Meg said with a smile. Helge and Hebeng were the restaurant's first customers, so Amy remembered them very well. Is that so? Studying. Good. Helge scratched his head as he saw the people behind him waiting to enter, so he hurriedly walked into the restaurant. Bernice stopped at the entrance of the restaurant, and turned to Mag with a smile as she said, "Congratulations, Boss Mag. All 5 of your dishes have made it to the top 100 on the Aiden Square Food Competition Rankings Board. This is an unprecedented feat. You're too humble, Boss Bernice. I heard that your restaurant made it into the top 10 this time. Mamie's is still a far cry from that." Mag shook his head with a smile. Bernice was also the owner of a restaurant in the Aiden Square. Earlier, a few of the restaurant owners had come to dine together, and after that, they would occasionally come to dine together, so they had become quite familiar with each other. "Mr. Mac, you're making me feel a little embarrassed. If it weren't for the size of your restaurant, all of your dishes would have made it into the top 10. Bernice shook her head with a smile, and continued, "Also, I heard that the Catering Association is preparing to change the rules of the Aiden Square Food Competition. The rankings will no longer be decided by the votes of the customers. Perhaps next month's Aiden Square Food Competition will be dominated by Mamie's. Thank you, Boss Bernice. Please come in." Meg shook his head with a smile. Even though he was being praised, he didn't become complacent. If the system hadn't given him a mission, Meg wouldn't have been willing to buy a ticket that cost 1 copper coin. He didn't care about rankings at all. Another new dish. I heard from Master Marcy that the sweet tofu pudding was super delicious last time, but these customers are also saying that the other dishes are also super delicious. Which one should I eat? Kenny stroked his bulging wallet with a conflicted expression. Kenny was an apprentice at Lacey's barbershop. He was 15 years old this year, and he was a little thin and frail with a head of soft, wavy blonde hair. He had been an apprentice for over 3 months, and the barbershop provided food and accommodation. He was responsible for washing the customer's hair every day. In the beginning, he was often scolded by customers for using too much water or using too much force. However, he was becoming more and more proficient at it now, and he had even been praised by a customer the day before. There was still over half a year before he could officially start learning how to cut hair. Even though it was a little difficult, Kenny was confident that he could persevere. As long as he could learn how to cut hair, he would be able to make a name for himself regardless of whether he stayed in the shop as a barber or returned to the village to open his own barbershop. Yesterday, the boss had given them their wages, and left some money to be sent home. Kenny also wanted to reward himself, so he came to try the delicious sweet tofu pudding that the best chef in the shop, Master Marcy, had mentioned. It was said that one serving cost 200 copper coins, which was almost half his monthly salary. Kenny gripped the money pouch tightly. Even though it was quite heavy, it was filled with 200 copper coins. Kenny took a deep breath and made up his mind. He followed the customer in front of him into the restaurant. The two beautiful waitresses made him falter slightly before he lowered his head shyly. He had never seen such beautiful waitresses before, not even in the shop. Soon, the lavish decor in the restaurant attracted his attention. The dazzling chandeliers, intricate murals, and beautiful decorations on the walls made him feel a little dazzled. This was the first time that he had been to such a luxurious place. "Sir, there's an empty seat over there. There's a menu on the table. You can take a look at what you want to eat." Yabamiya looked at Kenny with a smile. Oh, okay. Kenny looked at Yabamiya's warm smile, and he immediately felt less nervous. He sat down on the seat next to her, and flipped open the menu on the table. His eyes immediately lit up. "Is this the tofu pudding? It looks so delicious. There's a big piece of meat sandwiched between two pancakes. It looks so delicious. This fish. I've never eaten fish before. It looks so delicious too." Chapter 437. After looking through all of the dishes on the menu with excitement on his face, Kenny looked at the prices at the bottom of the menu, and fell silent. "For 200 copper coins, I can only eat tofu pudding or ice cream. If Master Marcy says tofu pudding is delicious, then it must be very delicious. However, if I eat ice cream, then I'll be able to eat it before Master Marcy does. That way, I'll be able to join in on their conversation next time, right?" Kenny was conflicted between the tofu pudding and ice cream, and he didn't know which one to choose. Little guy, trying new things is what young people should do. The old man sitting beside him chuckled as he ordered a sweet tofu pudding. "I'd like an ice cream with chocolate flavor." Kenny closed the menu, and turned to Yabamiya. He had never heard of chocolate, and it was even more peculiar than the other three flavors. "Sure, please wait a moment." Yabamiya took a glance at Kenny, and nodded with a smile. She didn't ask any questions, as she could see a shadow of herself in this young man. She didn't need to ask why he only ordered an ice cream. "Thank you." Kenny was quite flattered by Yabamiya's response. His eyes gradually lit up at the sight of Yabamiya ordering food for the customers with a smile on her face. He suddenly knew what he should do after he learned how to cut hair and become a barber. He was going to stay in Chaos City and work at Lace's barbershop. He was going to become the best barber in Lace's barbershop, and then save money to open his own barbershop in Chaos City. "One day, I'm going to sit here and order whatever I want from the menu, just like them. I won't have to make difficult decisions just because I only have 200 copper coins in my pocket." Kenny clenched his fists tightly, and a confident smile appeared on his face. "Heiga, you're also in Chaos City. Is your hand all right?" Mobai had also come for breakfast, and he was a little surprised to see Heiga and Heibang sitting down across from them. "Yes, last night. I just arrived." My hand is fine, it's just a little broken, but it should be fine after a while. Helge smiled, and extended his uninjured hand toward Mobai with a grateful expression as he said, Thank you, Boss Mobai. We were able to win this battle all thanks to your timely assistance. There's no need to thank us. I thought you'd be the next chief, but I didn't think you'd come to Chaos City so soon. Mobai shook Helge's hand with a smile. That's what my father wants, but he doesn't want to do it. If I were him, I wouldn't want to do it either. If I became the chief, I wouldn't have so much freedom. I wouldn't be able to come to Chaos City to eat Boss Mag's delicious food, Haebang said with a smile. Haebang smile. The three of them chatted for a while. Helge looked around and asked curiously, Conti Nicholas. Is he okay? You mean that donkey rider? I haven't seen him in a long time. He said he was going to a remote town in the north to look for a giant dragon, and he left for about half a month. I haven't seen him in the restaurant since. With that guy's power, it's fine if he didn't meet a giant dragon. If he did, I'm afraid he wouldn't be able to come back. Haebang shook his head. Conti might be more powerful than we've imagined. I've seen many knights. Generally, the more powerful they are, the fewer they talk. Usually, those who talk too much will die faster. Knights like him usually live longer. Mobai said with a smile. Clip-clop, right at this moment, the sound of donkey hooves sounded. A black donkey carrying a silver-gray figure slowly came over. It stopped outside the restaurant's window for a while, and the person on the donkey jumped off, and tied the donkey to a tree nearby. Hey, he's here. Looks like he didn't meet a giant dragon this time, Haebang said with a smile as he looked at Conti, who was walking into the restaurant. With a tinkling sound, Conti pushed open the door and came in with a smile on his face. He was a little surprised to see that the restaurant was almost full. Then his eyes fell on the only empty seat left at Haebang's table, and he strode over. Hey, donkey-riding dragon slayer, did you meet a giant dragon this time? Haebang asked with a smile as if he were an old friend. The customers nearby all looked at Conti with curiosity. Dragon-slaying dragon slayer was a very special title on the Norland continent. The last person to use this title to its fullest was Meg Alex, a man who stood at the pinnacle of the Norland continent. He was bathed in dragon's blood, and no knight could compare to him. There were strong and weak giant dragons, so there were many knights who could slay dragons. Many knights took pride in slaying an evil giant dragon. Of course, in the past 3 years after Meg Alex's death, no knight on the Norland continent had slain a 10th-tier giant dragon. Long time no see. Helge looked up at Conti with a smile and nodded. Long time no see. Let me show you something. Conti wasn't in a hurry to answer Helge's question. Instead, he rummaged through his pocket and quickly pulled out a small black pouch from the software. He tipped it over on the table, and a pale golden dragon scale fell onto the table, emitting a soft glow under the light. This is... Haebang leaned over and stared at it for a while before exclaiming, the scale of a 10th-tier giant winged dragon. Donkey-riding dragon, you didn't really slay a 10th-tier giant winged dragon, did you? Really? Helge asked with a surprised expression. All of the customers in the restaurant turned to look at them upon hearing that. Many of them stood up and craned their necks to see what was going on. Dragon-slaying warriors were rare, and 10th-tier giant dragons were even rarer. A dragon-slaying warrior who had slain a 10th-tier giant dragon was the first knight after Meg Alex to do so, and that was enough to make his name known across the Norland continent. Conti really slayed a giant dragon. Meg also looked out with a curious expression. He was also very curious about Conti's power, but he had never seen him in action. However, he could tell that he was serious about slaying a giant dragon, even though he had to consider whether he could really catch up to a giant dragon while riding a donkey. Slaying a dragon. Yabamiya looked at Conti with a hint of fear in his heart. Was this middle-aged man who always had a smile on his face this terrifying? This is indeed the scale of a 10th-grade giant winged dragon. Conti maintained his calm smile under everyone's gazes. It really is a 10th-tier giant dragon. There was a sudden exclamation in the restaurant. The guests were shocked. They were wondering if Haebang had made a mistake, but now Conti admitted it himself. Could it be that this man really was the first knight after Meg Alex to slay a 10th-tier giant dragon? Chapter 438. But I picked it up. Conti put away the dragon scale on the table, and lamented, I was late again. I only found this dragon scale when I arrived, and the battle was already over. It should have been a battle between two giant dragons. Sigh. All of the customers sighed with disappointment. They all returned to their seats, and put down their hands that were about to clap. They had thought that they would be able to witness the birth of a legend. Who would have thought that this would be the result? It's only been a while since we last met, and you've already become naughty. You made me happy for nothing. Haebang rolled his eyes with a speechless expression. Haege gave a bashful smile, and wasn't angry at all. 1 Yangzhou fried rice, 1 Rigiamo, thank you. Conti removed his large sword from his waist, and stood beside the table. He looked at Yabamiya with a smile, and didn't explain anything. He's also an interesting person. Meg faltered slightly before shaking his head with a smile. He didn't think that this would be the result. It's a pity that Alex is dead. Otherwise, we'd be able to hear about his legendary dragon-slaying stories every once in a while. The reason why the Norland continent is so peaceful has to do with him slaying those evil dragons. Storyteller Carl heaved a forlorn sigh. Master Carl, why don't you tell another story about Alex slaying dragons next time? I've loved hearing stories about him since I was a child. He was the knight I admired the most, and a true man. Jimmy turned to Carl with an expectant look in his eyes. All of the other customers also turned to him upon hearing that. Stories about Alex had been widely spread on the continent in the past few years, but they were generally just rumors about where he had slain another evil dragon. As for the specifics, they didn't know. Carl was the best storyteller in Chaos City. He had told stories about Alex slaying dragons in the past, and every one of those stories had been sold out. However, he hadn't told stories about Alex since 3 years ago. Now that Jimmy had mentioned it, everyone was looking at Carl expectantly, wondering if he would agree. Since the legend has passed away, we only need to remember him. There's no need to talk about him. I don't like doing that. Carl shook his head and paused for a moment. He then smiled and shook his head. I want to tell a story about a dragon slayer in my lifetime. I don't know if there will be a chance. What kind of person will the main character be? Everyone looked at the white-haired Carl. It had been 3 years since a publicly acknowledged dragon slayer had appeared on the Norland continent. No one could be sure if Carl would be able to see one in his lifetime. Don't worry, you'll have a chance. A smile appeared on Mag's face as he looked at Carl. There was still a frost dragon left for Amy. If he worked hard, he would have reached the 10th tier by then, right? Kenny's ice cream was the first to be brought out, and everyone's eyes followed the ice cream in Yabamiya's hand. It was exactly the same as the picture on the menu. It was a small cone with 2 black and white snowballs on top. Dense cold air rose from it, and it looked quite cute, but they didn't know how it would taste. Here's your chocolate ice cream. Please enjoy. Yabamiya handed the ice cream to Kenny with a smile, and said, you can slowly lick it with your tongue. Alright, thank you. Kenny carefully held the ice cream in his hands, and his eyes were completely drawn to the ice cream. Dense cold air wafted toward him, bringing with it a sweet milky aroma. There was also a fragrance that he had never smelled before. It was most likely the so-called chocolate aroma, and it was a delightful aroma that he was immediately intoxicated by. The two little snowballs were a perfect blend of white milk and black chocolate, and they were intertwined together like two smooth ribbons. They looked extremely intricate, and he wondered what kind of method had been used to achieve this. Is this ice cream? Everyone's eyes were also drawn to the ice cream in Kenny's hand. Every new dish that the restaurant released attracted a lot of attention, but before they tried it themselves, they had to see how others reacted to it to determine whether it was worth trying. Kenny swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and his stomach grumbled from not having eaten anything in the morning. He couldn't help but stick out his tongue to take a lick of the ice cream. The first thing that struck him when his tongue came into contact with the ice cream was a cool sensation. He could then feel the ice cream slowly melting on the tip of his tongue, and a rich and seductive sweetness slowly flowed into his mouth. The alluring milky aroma filled his mouth, and the texture was extremely rich and mellow. It was as if a gentle hand had gently slid down his cheek, then slowly down his neck. What an incredible taste! The milk is so fragrant, but it's not just milk. After entering my mouth, the wonderful and mellow sweetness gushes out in layers. The layers are so distinct, and it's so delicious. After swallowing, Kenny looked at the ice cream in his hand with an incredulous expression, and he couldn't help but lick it again. He closed his eyes to savor this unparalleled delicious experience, and it was as if he were holding a beautiful young woman in his arms. He was licking his lips gently, fearful that he would hurt her if he used too much force. It looks delicious, isn't it? Do you want me to have one as well? Jimmy looked at Kenny, who was licking his ice cream with an expression of enjoyment, and he patted his pocket as he fell into deep thought. He had just received his allowance for this month, but if he wanted to survive this month, he had to be frugal. He had just ordered a tofu pudding, and if he ordered another ice cream, then he wouldn't be able to eat at Amy's tomorrow. I want an ice cream, and I want the same flavor. Serve it after I finish my Yangzhou fried rice, a young man said as he raised his hand. Father, I also want to eat ice cream. I want to eat it too. Can you buy one for me, please? A little loli hugged her father's arm, and her large eyes were filled with anticipation. No, your mother said that you can't eat anything cold in the morning. The father shook his head with a resolute expression. Wah, I don't want it. I want to eat it. I want to eat ice cream. The little loli immediately burst into tears upon hearing this, and tears streamed down her face, making her appear rather pitiful. Baby, don't cry, don't cry. I'll ask your mother in the afternoon, and see if she's willing to let you eat ice cream. Otherwise, we'll both be punished to stand when we get back. The father hurriedly coaxed his daughter carefully, and picked up the sweet tofu pudding that had just been placed on the table. Here, your favorite tofu pudding is here. Let's eat it first. Chapter 439. All of the customers nearby looked at the little loli who was slumped in her chair with kind smiles on their faces. She was so chubby and adorable. The young father looked at his daughter, who had snuck a peek at him before immediately closing it again, and he was both resigned and amused. He looked at Kenny, who was happily licking his ice cream, and hesitated momentarily before smiling in a resigned manner. All right, eat the tofu pudding and half a bowl of fried rice, and I'll buy you some ice cream. Really? The little loli opened her eyes and looked at her father. When have I ever lied to you? The father asked with a smile. All right. Then I'll eat it myself. Thank you, father. The little loli immediately sat up, and took the spoon from her father's hand. She then scooped up a large spoonful of tofu pudding, and began to eat it with relish. I hope I won't have to kneel down to strange things when I get back. The father looked at the adorable little loli as she ate, and sighed in resignation. He really didn't know what to do with this little girl. So this is the taste of an ice cream that costs 200 copper coins each. It's completely different from a pancake that costs only 1 copper coin each. So there really is such an indescribable delicacy in this world. If I have the money, I want to eat 10 more pancakes. After finishing all of the eggshells, Kenny looked at the paper bag in his hand with a yearning expression. He looked at the customers in the restaurant, and swallowed his saliva. However, he didn't reveal too much envy. Instead, he took out the money pouch from his waist, and raised his hand to indicate the bill. It's a total of 200 copper coins. Please check it. Kenny handed the money pouch to Sally with a slightly uneasy expression. There shouldn't be anyone here who would take out so many copper coins to pay the bill. All right. Sally took the money pouch with a natural expression, and began to check it. She rummaged through the money pouch a few times, and then poured out all of the copper coins into a small pouch. She nodded at Kenny, and said, 200 copper coins is just right. All right, thank you. Kenny nodded as he accepted the empty purse. He walked out of the restaurant, and a smile appeared on his face as he said to himself, I'm going to become the best hairdresser in Lace, and the best hairdresser in Chaos City. I'm going to be able to eat here 3 times a day. Kenny clenched his fists, and quickly strode toward the barbershop. After breakfast, there were also many customers who ordered ice cream with the intention of trying it out. Then, they were quickly dominated by the sweet and refreshing taste of the ice cream. It was early in the morning, and the ice cream simply couldn't stop. Mr. Mac, I want to buy an ice cream for my son. Can I take it out? Dicus was at the kitchen door, and he turned to Megs who was paying the bill. Meg shook his head with a smile, and said, if you're an ice magic caster, then you can consider it. Ice cream melts very quickly at room temperature, so we don't provide takeout service. You can bring him here on your day off, and it'll be even better if it's freshly made. Alright, then I'll have to bring him here on my day off. Dicus nodded with a hint of disappointment. He then gave Meg a thumbs up, and said, Mr. Mac, your restaurant will definitely become the most popular restaurant in the Aiden Square. You're too kind. Meg smiled. He was starting to become immune to these kinds of compliments. After the morning opening hours, Sally and Yabamiya went out to buy clothes together after cleaning up the restaurant. System, the empty space in front of the restaurant is mine now. The mission should be completed, right? Meg pushed open the door, and looked at the empty space in front of the restaurant, as well as the tall wall not far away. Amy's was located in the westernmost corner of the Aiden Square. A 5-meter-tall wall separated the Aiden Square from the Bowtie prison, and Amy's was right next to the wall. Of course, this was relative. For the sake of aesthetics and lighting, Mamie Restaurant was still close to 20 meters away from the wall. Furthermore, there were 2 rows of trees planted right next to the wall. The intertwining shadows of the trees almost covered the entire wall, so the restaurant didn't feel oppressive at all. As for safety, there was a 10-meter deep trench in the middle of the 5-meter-tall wall, which was filled with traps. After that, there were 5 more walls, and the Bowtie prison was in the middle of the 5 walls. Also, the Bowtie prison was divided into 2 sections, the ground section and the underground section. The ground section only held low-level criminals and some minor criminals, while the serious criminals and powerful criminals were all locked up in the underground section. As for how deep the deepest section of the prison was, no one knew except for the warden and the mayor. However, one thing was for sure, and that was that even 10th-tier criminals couldn't escape from the Bowtie prison. It was said that there were more than 10 10th-tier criminals in the Bowtie prison now. Most of them were war criminals left over from the war among species, and some were important figures who had seriously violated the laws of Chaos City in recent years. The laws of Chaos City hadn't become a joke on the Norland continent, and the most important reason was that the city lord's castle and the Great Temple had locked up those 10th-tier criminals in the Bowtie prison. 15 years ago, the Lord of the Great Temple, Roland, led the 10 elders of the Great Temple to hunt down a 10th-tier giant dragon who had committed the massacre of an entire family in Chaos City on the Dragon Island. After that, they were besieged. The city lord of Chaos City, Michael, mobilized the entire city to the Dragon Island to welcome the return of the Great Temple along with Principal Novin. The Dragon Island had no choice but to release the Great Temple in the end due to pressure from all the other races. After that battle, the laws of Chaos City became renowned throughout the Norland continent, and no one dared to ignore them. After that, Chaos City made a rule that all giant dragons below the 9th tier had to take human form in Chaos City. Unless there were special circumstances, they couldn't reveal their true form in Chaos City. Otherwise, they would be banished from the city and denied entry to the city forever. Meg withdrew his gaze from the tall wall. It could be said that all of the current leaders of Chaos City were idealists. Regardless of whether it was the city lord who was promoting equality, the palace lord who was trying to make Chaos City a safer place, or the principal who was trying to equalize education, all of them were doing things that were completely out of line with this world. However, I have to admit that it's exactly because of these people that Chaos City is so lovely. A smile appeared on Meg's face. Apart from the little forest beside the wall, the marble floor extended 5 to 6 meters toward the wall after reaching Amy's. It was 6 meters wide, so it wouldn't be a problem to set up 4 tables for 4 people. Ding! Congratulations, host, for obtaining the right to use the open-air space. You have fulfilled the requirement of 16 seats. Mission accomplished. Reward, 1 open-air seat renovation. The system's voice sounded. Then just renovate it for me, Meg said in his heart after making sure there was no one around. Chapter 440. Crap. System, didn't you say you wanted me to do this quest to expand the restaurant's outdoor seating area because the restaurant's level is too low? Meg was stunned for a moment. He could not help but blurt out, feeling as if he had been played for a fool. Yes. However, although the host has obtained an outdoor seating area, the host does not have the authority to use it because the restaurant's level is too low. If the host wishes to use this renovation, please upgrade the restaurant's level as soon as possible and obtain the renovation authority, the system replied seriously. MMP. Meg rubbed his forehead. He was no longer angry. He took 2 deep breaths to calm himself down. Inwardly, he said, System, check my balance. Restaurant balance, 47100021 copper coins, the system quickly replied. Then I'm only missing the reservation fee from the city lord's mansion. Meg raised his eyebrows. He was still over 30,000 gold coins away from upgrading the restaurant. However, aside from purchasing the strength points, Meg did not have any large expenditures for the time being. Meanwhile, the system had already asked for 50,000 gold coins to purchase the second strength point. Right now, the most important thing was naturally the strength points. Hence, the matter of increasing his strength was urgent. Hence, he still needed to save this money. System, what are the benefits of upgrading the restaurant? If it's just a few decorations, then I won't upgrade it, Meg asked leisurely as he pulled up a chair and sat by the restaurant's entrance, basking in the sun. In any case, after purchasing the strength points today, the restaurant could be upgraded. The outdoor seating area would also not be a problem. There will be many benefits after the restaurant's upgrade. Aside from the renovation authority, the system will also have access to many other authorities. There will also be an upgrade gift pack waiting for the host. Once lost, it will not come again. Hurry up and upgrade, the system said noisily. Is that so? But I'm not in a hurry at all. I even want to take a nap first. Meg stretched lazily. If the restaurant's upgrade would result in major changes, it would be better to do it at night. It would also be easier to work through the night. As for the restaurant's upgrade, Meg was more concerned about the restaurant's defense. This was the foundation of being able to sleep soundly in this world. No one could be in a state of alert 24 hours a day. Even a level 10 expert could not do so. And if he had to guard against all kinds of dangers every day, he would lose the joy of life. Meg didn't want to live every day in fear. Therefore, his ultimate goal was very simple. One day, he would upgrade the restaurant's defense to level 10. At that time, it wouldn't matter even if he announced his identity to the world. It would be an absolutely safe fortress. Moreover, Meg Alex back then was not at the point where he was the enemy of the entire world. Otherwise, those guys would not have needed to find so many people to take the blame and be buried with him. In the military of the Roth Empire, he was extremely respected, and was even regarded as a legend. Perhaps this was the main reason why that person sitting in the royal palace of Rodu had allowed that incident to take place. Of course, these things were still very far away from Meg. As long as he didn't expose his power and expose his identity, and continued to develop before the people of Rodu came looking for him, he would be able to increase his power and gain more capital at the same time. When the entire world couldn't avoid him, no one would dare to plot against him. This capital was not just a person's power. Meg Alex had already proven one thing. No matter how powerful a person was, even if they could easily slay a dragon, there was a limit to their power, and death was inevitable. He was too independent. He didn't control the military, and didn't make friends with the officials. He was like a lone ranger who only had Irina by his side. Being powerful but unable to control was a dangerous existence in the eyes of those in power. If they couldn't use him, then he would be an unstable factor, and killing him would be the only option. What was laughable was that Meg Alex was the hero of the Roth Empire, but he had fallen at the hands of his own people. As such, Meg didn't plan to walk the path of a lone ranger this time. The simplest and most direct way to increase his overall power was to establish a force, and then nurture his subordinates to become a powerful force. However, Meg didn't plan to do that. Playing with Amy every day and serving customers was a very relaxing life. He didn't want to become a pyramid schemer. Furthermore, it was impossible for a force to become the enemy of the Roth Empire in a short period of time on the Norland continent, even if it was led by a 10th-tier knight or magic caster. Of course, there were many other ways to increase his power. Meg's current train of thought was very simple. He didn't want to nurture his subordinates, and he wanted to bind them. He wanted to bind some powerful forces to him, and the more powerful such forces there were, the more influence he would have, and he would have the capital to negotiate with others. At present, Chaos City was clearly a good choice. It was large enough, and had the power to negotiate with the Roth Empire. More importantly, Meg felt very comfortable in Chaos City, so he was happy to see this city become better. However, Meg wasn't the lord of the Grey Temple, after all. Even if he recovered his full power, he still wouldn't be able to make Chaos City support him with the entire city's power. He knew that very well. Amy's food was a good way to get him into the good graces of Chaos City's management, but it wasn't enough. A mature politician wouldn't make an enemy of an entire empire for a restaurant. Meg's real trump card was the steam engine. It was an epic-making invention that could usher this world into the age of steam. With the development of the economy, the production of handicrafts in factories could no longer meet the needs of the market. Although the races with magic and endurance had great advantages in production, with the continuous development of trade and the increasing consumption of civilians in a peaceful environment, the entire continent's market was constantly expanding and had great potential. A large number of workshops were set up one after another, and they were in the stage of rapid expansion. An industrial revolution was brewing. However, due to the contradiction between supply and demand, there was no alternative to human and animal power that could effectively increase production efficiency. If the steam engine were to be born at this time, it would definitely be able to quickly usher the Norland continent into the Industrial Revolution. This was also why the City Lord's castle was supporting the Hater team. The steam engine, coal, and steel were the three main factors that promoted the Industrial Revolution. The Norland continent had already satisfied the last two. Whoever could control the core technology of the steam engine would have the initiative to usher the world into the age of steam. And now, this thing was installed in Meg's mind. What Meg had to do now was to think of a way to maximize the benefits of the steam engine. It wasn't just about how much money he could sell it for. More importantly, he had to think of a way to stand on the shoulders of giants and gain some control over the industry. Chapter 441. Meg already had two detailed plans in his mind, but none of them met his expectations. Regardless of whether he was collaborating with Heidel or going to the City Lord's castle, it would be very difficult for him to secure what he wanted at the negotiation table when there was too much of a disparity in power between the two parties. As expected, dealing with politicians is the most troublesome thing. If I can't see any results, it's basically impossible to convince them to compromise. Meg shook his head with a smile as he looked at the empty space in front of the restaurant. However, the current government of Chaos City was already very interesting, so it wasn't impossible for Meg to make some concessions to them. He didn't want much, all he wanted was a stable life. Making money was just a side benefit. Just as Meg was about to fall asleep, a crisp voice sounded beside his ear. "Mr. Meg, right? I'm from the City Lord's Castle's finance department, and I'm here to settle the fees for booking the restaurant yesterday." "Yes, I did. I didn't think the City Lord's castle would be so efficient." Meg opened his eyes to find a woman in the City Lord's castle's blue uniform standing before him with a smile on her face. The woman appeared to be around 21 or 22 years of age, with a petite figure and an oval face. She had a head of black hair that just reached her ears, and appeared to be very capable and efficient. She was looking at Meg with a hint of curiosity in her eyes. "Is this the restaurant owner who ended the meeting in one night?" Fanny looked at Meg, and found that he was younger and more handsome than she had imagined. He was a very charming middle-aged man. The conference between the dragons and demons concluded in a single night, and the news that both sides had successfully reached an agreement and signed an armistice agreement in the morning had already spread throughout the City Lord's castle. It was rumored that the owner of the restaurant where the conference had taken place last night had become the talk of the town. It was said that the restaurant owner had contributed greatly to the conclusion of the conference. It was just that the specific content of the conference was confidential, so no one had heard about it. However, that was enough to cast a veil of mystery over the owner of the restaurant. 300,000 copper coins for booking the entire restaurant for a single night, a mysterious owner, and a key figure in the conference, all of this was enough to make people curious. "Is there something on my face?" Meg smiled as he looked at Fanny, who was staring at him. Compared to her capable and experienced appearance, this young woman was a little adorable. "Ah, no." Fanny also came to her senses, and she hurriedly shook her head as a blush appeared on her face. She looked at Meg with an embarrassed expression, and asked, "Mr. Meg, is it convenient for you to settle the bill now?" "Of course, please come in." Meg nodded with a smile. He opened the door of the restaurant and gestured for Fanny to enter. "Thank you." Fanny nodded slightly as she gave Meg another thumbs up in her heart. Aside from his handsome looks, he was also a gentle and polite person. Fanny's eyes were filled with amazement as she looked around the restaurant. She was wondering why the city lord had chosen such a small restaurant, but she didn't think that aside from the massive transparent crystal at the entrance, the interior of the restaurant was just as lavish. "Please have a seat and drink some water, Meg said with a smile as he walked out of the kitchen and gently placed a cup of water on the table. Thank you. Fanny sat down and placed the folder in her hand onto the table. She carefully picked up the glass cup with both hands, and her gaze slowly drifted upward until she was at eye level with the cup. She was slightly taken aback by the sight of Meg sitting across from her, and she blinked with incredulity. She suddenly realized that what she was doing was a little inappropriate, and she hurriedly tilted the cup toward her before tucking her hair behind her ear in an apologetic manner. Sorry, this is my first time seeing a crystal cup, so, it's all right, it's nothing. The first time I saw it, I hugged it to sleep for an entire night. Meg shook his head with a smile. Pfft. Fanny couldn't help but burst into laughter as she looked at Meg with gratitude in her eyes. Just a simple sentence had resolved the awkwardness between them. This is the receipt form, please sign here. I need to take it back with me. Fanny took a sip of water to compose herself before pulling out 2 pieces of paper from the folder and handing them to Meg. At the same time, she handed over a blue pouch with a smile, and said, also, here are 300 dragon coins, please check them. I'm sure the City Lord's castle won't shortchange me by even a single copper coin. Meg picked up a pen and signed his name on the paper before stowing away the pouch with a smile. The system had already notified him of the amount of money he had received, and he wasn't shortchanged by even a single copper coin. Mr. Meg really is an interesting person. Fanny took the document back. She had already counted the money twice before coming here, so she wasn't worried that it was missing. She glanced at the document, and was a little surprised. The handwriting on the document was elegant and beautiful, even better than her own. If I don't open a restaurant, there won't be any customers, Meg said with a smile. In this life, perhaps it was because of Amy, but he had become a lot more outgoing. In his past life, aside from a few fair-weather friends, he was very aloof toward everyone else. However, in this life, he was more willing to listen to the conversations of these customers and listen to their interesting conversations and stories. Without the strings of numbers on the internet, he was paying more attention to life, and only then did he discover that life was far more interesting than he had imagined. Mr. Meg, I heard that Mamie's is very delicious. Can I order a meal now? I came here without breakfast. Fanny put away the document, and looked at Meg with a hint of anticipation and nervousness in her eyes. Before coming here, her colleagues had told her that the owner of Mamie's was very rigid and wouldn't cook outside of business hours. However, after meeting Meg today, she felt that he was more gentle and kind than she had imagined, so perhaps he would agree to her request. My apologies, but the restaurant isn't open right now, so we don't serve food. If you'd like to eat, you can come here during business hours. Meg shook his head with a smile. There was no room for negotiation. All right, then I'll come again next time. Fanny nodded with a hint of disappointment at the sight of Meg's determined expression. She drank the water in her cup and stood up with the document in her hand. Then, Mr. Meg, I'll be taking my leave now. By the way, my name is Fanny. All right, Miss Fanny. Meg stood up and walked Fanny out of the door. After watching her disappear into the distance, he said in his mind, System, I'd like to purchase a second strength point. The second strength point will cost 50,000 gold coins. Are you sure you wish to purchase it? The system's voice sounded. Yes, purchase. I want to become stronger. Meg nodded with a determined look in his eyes. Ding. 50,000 gold coins have been successfully deducted. The second strength point has been successfully purchased. Do you wish to use this strength point now? The system's voice sounded. All right. No, wait a minute. Ding. The strength point has been successfully activated. What did you say? Chapter 442. What did it feel like to be electrocuted to the point of finishing a dance? If he was given music, Meg felt that he might be able to win the Dance King competition. System, fuck your mother. Standing at the entrance of the restaurant, Meg touched his afro hair, which made a crackling sound. He immediately retracted his hand and felt that his fingers were a little numb. The chef's uniform on his body had a few holes because of the strong electric current. There were also some black holes caused by the electric current. A faint burnt smell filled the restaurant. Host, please do not insult the system. The system's serious voice sounded. Fuck your mother. Fuck your mother. Meg cursed again. He was not prepared to be electrocuted. He did not know how many volts of electric current passed through his body, stimulating all the cells in his body. At that moment, he felt as if he had seen heaven. That kind of refreshing feeling was simply indescribable. Meg took a look at his clothes. Apart from a layer of dust, there was nothing wrong with his body. He was not burned either. Only then did Meg let out a sigh of relief. After a while, the electric current in his hair calmed down. Meg tried to clench his fist. His muscles contracted, bringing a strong feedback. Compared to before, his strength had increased by a lot. His physical strength increased by 0.5. His strength had reached the standard of a level 1 knight. Moreover, after his physical strength increased, his speed and swordsmanship also had room for improvement. His overall strength should be able to increase by relying on this physical strength. Host, the system again. The system said seriously. My points should be at least 50,000, right? Will I be able to upgrade the restaurant after I reach 50,000 points? Meg asked casually as he locked the door and walked upstairs. The system swallowed back the words that were about to come out of its mouth. After a moment of silence, it changed into a positive tone and said, yes, the host's points have reached 63,000 points. The host has met the requirements to upgrade the restaurant. The host can exchange points and upgrade the restaurant to level 2. Sorry, I don't have that idea now. Meg smiled and refused. You. The system did not know how to respond for a moment. Taking off his tattered clothes and throwing them aside, Meg entered the bathroom and began to seriously wash off the stains on his body, feeling the changes brought about by the increase in his physical strength. Meg's increase in strength was different from ordinary people's cultivation. It was more like an unlocking game. By completing the system's missions, he would unlock his body's strength and thus increase his realm. Then, on the basis of this realm, through practicing swordsmanship without training, one's strength would be raised to the highest level that one could reach in this realm. The improvement of his physical fitness meant that the upper limit of his speed had been lifted. His swordsmanship could also continue to improve. These were the directions that he should focus on in the future. If I train my swordsmanship to the extreme, I should have no problem dealing with a level 3 swordsman, right? Meg muttered to himself as he washed off the gray impurities on his body. At the north gate of Chaos City, a row of gray horse-drawn carriages slowly drove over. The horses pulling the carriages were first-tier magic beasts, unicorns. They were easy to tame and had great endurance, so they were often used for long-distance transportation. Behind these horse-drawn carriages were boxes of goods. From the heavy footsteps of the unicorns and their fatigued expressions, it could be seen that these boxes were very heavy. The coachman driving the carriages also wore fatigued expressions. There were a total of 15 such carriages. On the shaft of the last carriage sat a middle-aged man in a suit of silver armor. He had a large sword in his hand as he looked up at the city walls of Chaos City with a smile on his face. Behind these carriages were 8 other horse-drawn carriages, all of which had the insignia of the Roth Empire's Magus Tower printed on them. The curtain of the carriage at the very front was lifted, and a young man with a head of curly golden hair poked his head out. He looked up at the imposing city walls of Chaos City, and a hint of surprise appeared on his face as he said, "So this is Chaos City? I didn't think that there really would be a city as big as Rodu." The young man appeared to be around 12 or 13 years old. He had fair skin and dark brown eyes. He wore a dark blue magus robe, and there was a small golden tower insignia on his chest. That was the insignia of the Roth Empire's Magus Tower. That's right. What a big city. I heard that there are all types of different races in Chaos City, and even giant dragons are quite common here. You can't even see something like this in Rodu. Another young magic caster chimed in as he poked his head out to look at the scenery outside. This is a city built by a bunch of rabble. It doesn't even deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as Rodu. Even if it's similar in size, there's no way it can be as prosperous and chaotic as Rodu, another young man said with a disdainful expression. That young man appeared to be around 15 or 16 years old, and was also wearing a dark blue magus robe. He had a head of striking green hair, which was tied up into a messy ponytail. His skin was a little sallow, and there were a few freckles on his face. He had his chin slightly raised as if he were looking at people through his nostrils. "Hank, my master told me that Chaos City is very safe, and he warned me that I have to abide by the laws of Chaos City. Otherwise, I might not be able to return." "Is that true?" the golden-haired young man asked with a hint of curiosity in his eyes. "We're here to challenge Chaos School as representatives of the Magus Tower, and we have the Roth Empire backing us up. Why would we care about the laws of a tiny Chaos City?" Hank pursed his lips as he looked at the golden-haired young man with a mocking expression, and said, "George, you're quite talented, but you're still a little too cowardly. The magic casters of our Magus Tower have always followed the rules of the Magus Tower, so we don't have to abide by the laws of other places. Even the laws of the Roth Empire have a special exemption for us, so Chaos City is nothing. Do you really think they dare to keep us here?" "That's right. The Magus Tower is the most powerful magic caster organization on the Norland continent. We don't have to obey the laws of Chaos City." The young man nodded with an excited expression. "So that's how it is." George nodded with a contemplative expression before asking, "Aside from representing the Magus Tower to challenge Chaos School, we're also here to congratulate Grandmaster Crassus on accepting a new disciple, right? Furthermore, our master wants us to challenge Grandmaster Crassus' new disciple, so we have to take this seriously, right? Crassus is just a little older, that's all. My master said that he can humiliate him with a single hand. As for his new disciple, she's nothing." A disdainful smile appeared on Hank's face as he spun a green wand around his fingertips. Chapter 443. "Master, I've already learned the Firestorm Wheels. What new spell are we going to learn today?" Amy asked curiously as she looked at Crassus in the magic room. The two firestorm wheels beneath her feet spun rapidly, and she levitated 40 centimeters into the air. "We're not going to learn a new spell today, but instead, we're going to do a new experiment. I heard that old man Julian taught you a spell called Extreme Frost Ice Flame recently, right? Let's try fusing Extreme Frost Ice Flame and Explosive Fireball together and see what kind of effect it will produce," Crassus said with a smile as he looked at the two firestorm wheels beneath Amy's feet. "Fuse? How do you fuse ice and fire?" Amy was puzzled. Ice and fire can't be fused under normal circumstances because their attributes are completely opposite. They'll explode upon contact, and they're very powerful. This is why Julian and I are often very destructive in our battles. Crassus nodded with a smile. "But little Amy's situation is a little special. You were the one who released both ice and fire. This situation rarely occurs among magic casters because no one will practice two types of magic at the same time. So, I'm thinking that if Amy can fuse the two types of magic together, perhaps she can create a new spell that's far more powerful than Extreme Frost Ice Flame and Explosive Fireball. Really? Then where should we start? Amy asked excitedly as she looked at Crassus with interest. Let's start here. Master will keep an eye on things for you. Little Amy, you can do whatever you want, Crassus said with a smile as he took 2 steps back. His tone was very casual, and he fully displayed the qualities of a grandmaster. Okay. Amy nodded, and the expression on her little face suddenly became serious. She slowly raised her 2 little hands, and a ball of icy blue firestorm wheels rose from her left hand. At the same time, a ball of reddish-purple firestorm wheels rose from her right hand. The 2 balls of firestorm wheels burned silently. Fire and firestorm wheels appeared at the same time, and cold and heat descended at the same time, separating Amy from her left and right. Master, I'm going to fuse. Amy said as she slowly raised her 2 small hands. 2 balls of flames flew out from her palms and slowly approached the 2 of them. The cold air and heat waves that were originally isolated from each other began to become somewhat unstable after the ice flames and flames approached each other. They corroded each other and even made sizzling sounds. The fire and ice flames were also trembling slightly, as if they would explode at any moment. However, under Amy's control, they slowly approached each other in an attempt to merge. Come at me, I will protect you. Crassus's eyes were getting brighter and brighter. He was also looking forward to it. This idea came to him on a whim. He wasn't sure if the fusion would be successful, and whether the fusion would increase the power or cancel each other out. Master, I feel like they're going to explode. Will they blow up the magic room? Amy suddenly stopped with a concerned look on her face. Crassus waved his hand nonchalantly and said, Don't worry, Master is here. Even if the magic room explodes, there won't be any danger. Besides, Arthur has already returned today, so Amy will soon have a brand new magic room, one that is dozens of times more advanced than this one. Boom! A loud boom rang out from the teaching building in the corner of the Magic Academy. The 3-story building trembled, and the old walls fell to the ground. The students and teachers on the 1st and 2nd floors all ran out of their classrooms in a panic. They stood in the open space outside the teaching building and looked at the Magic Academy on the 3rd floor, where steam was rising from the windows with dumbfounded expressions. Teacher, did the building explode? A student asked curiously. I think so. The magic teacher was also dumbfounded. Just now, he felt a strong magical wave coming from upstairs, but he also knew the identity of the person upstairs, so the first thing he did was to evacuate the students to a safe place. As for denouncing someone, that was not something he dared to do. Master Crassus. Master Crassus. Are you all right? In the steamy magic room, Amy looked at Crassus with a concerned expression. His white hair was standing on end, and his half-length beard was slightly curled in the middle. His face was drenched in water. Amy was completely unscathed. Not even a few drops of water had landed on her. Oh. I'm fine. I just didn't think that the fusion would be so powerful. Crassus chuckled awkwardly. He had wanted to minimize the problem that had arisen during the fusion, but he didn't think that it would explode as soon as it had just begun. Moreover, it was quite powerful, so he was completely caught off guard. A ball of flame appeared in his hand, and the water vapor in the magic room quickly receded as if it had encountered its natural predator. In the blink of an eye, the magic room was dry again, and there wasn't a single trace of water on his body. All right, go back to class. No matter what you hear later, there's no need to run. Just continue with your classes. The teacher looked at the water vapor that had already receded, and shook his head in exasperation. He hurried the students back to class. Master, did the fusion fail this time? But I feel like they really confuse. It's as if there's something stopping them. Amy looked up at Crassus with her brows furrowed. She didn't seem to be able to figure out what was going on. Little Amy, have you already sensed that? Crassus had already planned to ask Amy to give up for now, but his eyes lit up as he smiled, and said, then continue with your practice. Find that thing during your practice, and then take care of it. A brand new spell has been created by little Amy. Amy nodded with a concerned expression as she turned to Crassus, and said, all right, then I'll continue with my practice. Step back a little, master. Be careful of the explosion. Ahem, that was just a small accident. You can continue, little Amy. Crassus blushed slightly, but still took a couple of steps back. That morning, a series of explosions erupted, and the entire magic building shook countless times. The students in class downstairs were slowly getting used to this feeling. Young Master Blower, did you rest well last night? In the eastern part of the city, there was a large room in the backyard of the Elven Embassy in Chaos City. Yngve knocked on the door with a smile. After a while, the door suddenly opened, and a head with green tree sap smeared all over his face poked out. Phew! Yngve's eyes widened, and he reflexively took a couple of steps back. He raised his right hand, and almost couldn't resist the urge to slap him. Chapter 444. Young Master Blower, what are you doing? Yngve lowered his hand and looked at Blower, who was vomiting green tree sap all over his face. Only his eyes and teeth were still the same color as before. This guy had been a constant source of headaches for all of his elders ever since he was a child, and Yngve didn't know if he was asking for trouble by bringing him to Chaos City. I'm doing this because the journey from the Wind Forest to Chaos City was too tiring, so I got up early in the morning to do a facial mask. Good looks require maintenance. Otherwise, they'll only become uglier and uglier, Blower explained in a matter-of-fact manner. Yngve's brows furrowed. Even young Mistress Sally wasn't as pretentious as he was after coming to Chaos City. However, he didn't say anything about this. After all, even his father couldn't make him change his mind. Instead, he said, seeing as you've already come to Chaos City, it's time for you to meet young Mistress Sally. If you want to become the leader of the Billy family, then marrying young Mistress Sally is your only chance. If young Mistress Sally becomes the new Elven princess, then you could even become the Elven king. But I've never wanted to become the leader of the family. I don't want to become the Elven king either. Blower shrugged before turning to Yngve with a smile as he said, besides, do you really think the young mistress of the Brewster family can become the new Elven princess? Even if she does become the Elven princess, the only one who can become the Elven queen is Princess Irina. She's the epitome of beauty and intelligence, the epitome of power and charisma. There's no elf in this world who's more perfect than her, only she can become the Elven queen. But she's no longer the only candidate to become the Elven queen. Mistress Helena is looking for a new candidate, so it's unknown who will become the Elven queen in the end. Young Mistress Sally is the most likely contender, Yngve said with furrowed brows. Unknown. I've always been curious. 5 years ago, Princess Irina was already a 10th-tier magic caster who was renowned throughout the entire Norland continent. 3 years ago, she returned to the Elven race, and no one aside from the Queen dared to claim that they were a match for her. Do you think that Miss Sally, who is only a 7th-tier mage, can defeat Princess Irina and obtain the approval of the Tree of Life? If that's the case, what's the point of Helena recommending those so-called candidates? A mocking smile appeared on Blower's face. Even though he looked rather comical with his face stained with tree sap, his voice was filled with determination. Yngve looked at Blower in silence for a long while, and a hint of elation appeared in his eyes. Everyone said that Blower's third young master was unambitious, and that he wouldn't amount to anything. However, Yngvie's words were far more insightful than the vast majority of elves. However, politics was often not as simple as it appeared to be. There weren't many idiots in the major elven families, and Mistress Helena's influence in the elven race wasn't limited to her power alone. As the High Priestess, her prestige was close to that of the Queen. Perhaps you're right, but you came to Chaos City to establish a relationship with Miss Sally. Even if you can't make her fall in love with you, you have to at least make her return to the elven race of her own accord. That way, you'll be able to garner more praise and support from the Brewster family. That's very important to you. Otherwise, you can go back now, Yngwie said. To be honest, I'm also quite curious about Miss Sally, who ran away from home to marry me. Do I really look that frightening? I feel like she's going to regret her decision after seeing my stunning looks. If that happens, I'll be the one worrying about her. Blower stroked his chin with a concerned expression. Yngwie ignored Blower's narcissism with a serious expression and said, "Then let's go to that restaurant today. We'll find an excuse to meet her, but don't make it seem too abrupt. Otherwise, Miss Sally could run away again." "I can't do that today. I still haven't rested enough. I'm going back to sleep after putting on a face mask. Let's talk tomorrow." Blower shook his head with a yawn before closing the door. It's going to be extremely difficult to make Miss Sally fall in love with him. Yngwie looked at the closed door in silence for a while before shaking his head in a resigned manner. This guy was far too unreliable, but he didn't know what to say about him. After lunch, Meg took Amy to school, and he had only just returned to the restaurant when he heard a knock on the door. "Please come in, Principal Hayter." Meg opened the door and saw Heidel, who was holding a cloth bag under his arm, looking like an old cadre. He smiled and turned to the side. "Mr. Meg, I'm here to disturb you again. I hope you won't get sick of this old man." Hayter made his way into the restaurant with a smile. "I can learn a lot from chatting with Principal Hayter, so of course I won't get sick of him." Meg poured a glass of water for Hayter with a smile. He had a lot of respect for old geezers like him. His mentor was one such person, and even though he didn't have any major accomplishments, his attitude towards scientific research earned him a lot of respect. "I'm here to ask you about the transmission device you mentioned before." Hayter took a sip of water from the glass, then looked at Meg and began to ask him all kinds of questions. Meg answered all of these questions with reservations. The steam engine was a trend, and even though Hayter and the others had been working on it for decades, Meg couldn't just hand it over to them. It was also very important to him. "Mr. Meg, you have a very unique understanding and ideas about machinery. Even this old man is a little embarrassed." Hayter looked at Meg with admiration, then said seriously, "I still sincerely invite you to join our team. You can participate in the research during your free time in the restaurant. We won't force you to do so." "Principal Hayter, I'm sorry, but I have to spend more time with my daughter during my free time in the restaurant, so I don't have much time to participate in your research. However, if I have any ideas, I can tinker with it in the restaurant. Just treat it as something interesting during my free time." Meg declined with a smile. Once he joined their team, it would be hard to avoid a bad reputation if he wanted to go solo in the future. "I see. That's true. Taking care of your child is still very important." Hayter nodded, slightly disappointed. "I'm a little curious, Principal Hayter. Is your research exclusively supported by the City Lord's mansion?" Meg looked at Hayter and asked curiously. Chapter 445. The Buffett Family. Meg looked at Hayter with a surprised expression. He had offended 2 directors of the Aden Chamber of Commerce, and was disgusted by some of the rules of the Aden Chamber of Commerce that discriminated against half-breeds. As such, Meg had done some research on the Aden Chamber of Commerce. As such, he knew a lot about the Buffett family, who had founded the Aden Chamber of Commerce alongside family Moreton. The Buffett family owned the most famous bank on the Norland continent. Buffett banks could be found all over the Norland continent, and they even had many branches on the Dragon Island and the Demon Islands. Deposit certificates stamped with the bank's security code could be withdrawn from any of the Buffett bank's branches, thereby eliminating the inconvenience and danger of carrying large amounts of money around with them. They were very popular among long-distance merchants, and had also received the support of all races to ensure the safety of the bank. With the help of countless banks, the Buffett family had built a massive financial empire. No one knew how much money went through the Buffett banks every year, but one thing was for sure: the Buffett family was the most influential business family in Chaos City on the Norland continent. Even family Moreton couldn't compare with them. Furthermore, in recent years, the Buffett family's eldest son, Hill Buffett, had taken over the reins of power. He had made a series of bold and decisive reforms, and had expanded current and fixed deposits. At the same time, he had also begun to lend money to the outside world. This had greatly increased the volume of transactions and income of the Buffett banks, and lessened the pressure on the transfer of funds from all over the country. Even Meg was stunned by these forward-looking measures. He didn't think that the Buffett family would also invest in Hayter's design. In that case, Meg felt that the Buffett family wasn't as simple as it appeared to be on the surface. This was a huge family with enough wealth to tempt any ruler, so the roots hidden beneath the bank were most likely not simple. At the very least, this move of investing in the steam engine allowed Meg to see the foresight of the Buffett family. A sharp sense of smell was the basic attribute of a successful businessman. The family Moreton is now in control of the Aden Chamber of Commerce. The discrimination laws were basically formed under the family Moreton's management. I heard that the Hill Buffett family has decided to participate in the next election after the Buffett family withdrew from the Aden Chamber of Commerce 25 years ago. The Buffett family happens to be interested in steam engines and has a strong financial strength. Perhaps this is a good entry point to pry open the Aden Chamber of Commerce. Meg's eyes gradually brightened. A rough plan was slowly forming in his mind. Back then, when he told Goodnia that he wanted to overthrow the Aden Chamber of Commerce, it might have sounded arrogant to others, but that wasn't the case in Meg's heart. On the Norland continent, it was very common for half-breeds to be discriminated against. Chaos City was already considered a relatively friendly place, but the situation was even more severe in the Roth Empire and the Orc race. Half-breeds were basically enslaved. Amy was a half-elf, and Meg wanted to change the discrimination against half-breeds in this world. He wanted Amy to be able to be treated like a normal person one day. This was something that could change the world. Perhaps he could start by establishing the discrimination against half-breeds in the Aden Chamber of Commerce. Meg hadn't been able to find a way to do this in the past, but now, he seemed to have an idea. That's right. The Buffett family has given us a lot of help, but our research progress has been stagnant for a long time, and I'm quite sorry about that. If we can't produce results within 3 years, the Buffett family will most likely withdraw their investment. If that happens, our research will become even more difficult. Hayter heaved a resigned sigh. I'm sure you'll be able to produce results very soon, Principal Hayter. This is going to be a momentous event that will be recorded in the annals of the Norland continent, and the names of your team and Principal Hayter will be recorded there. Meg looked at Hayter with a smile. I certainly hope so. If our research is successful, Mr. Meg's name will definitely be recorded there as well. A smile appeared on Hayter's face again. I certainly hope so. Meg smiled. After chatting with Hayter for a while longer, Hayter rose to his feet and bade farewell to him. Perhaps I can find an opportunity to get in touch with the Buffett family. Compared to contacting the City Lord's castle directly, the Buffett family is clearly going to give me more say in this project. Meg stood at the entrance of the restaurant, and looked on as Hader left. His gaze then fell on the blacksmith's shop, and he thought to himself for a while before a smile appeared on his face. Perhaps I can make Ma buy a partner. I'll trade a cannon blueprint for a steam engine. That should be a good deal. In the central conference room of the Buffett Bank's headquarters. Our Buffett family has to succeed in the election in 2 months. Even though our family hasn't participated in the presidential election for over 20 years, and we don't usually participate in the management of the Chamber of Commerce, over 80% of the members of the Chamber of Commerce have business dealings with our bank, and many of them have borrowed money from us. As long as we can win the support of over half of them, we'll succeed in this election. Hill Buffett, who was dressed in red, sat at the head of the table and looked at the executives of the bank sitting on both sides of the long table in the conference room. His beautiful face was full of confidence. Miss, from the previous elections, the family Moreton has an absolute advantage. The Dodges family and the Marquis family didn't even get 1/3 of the votes in the election. They posed no threat to Jeffrey at all. Jeffrey has great prestige in the Aden Chamber of Commerce. Even though our Buffett Banks has business dealings with many merchants, these transactions are two-way. Our Buffett Banks relies on the excellent merchants of the Aden Chamber of Commerce to develop. We can't use this aspect to coerce them. Therefore, I don't think this election is optimistic. Unless we have conditions that the other merchants can't refuse, the result won't be much different from the Dodges family. The bald middle-aged man sitting at the head of the table on the right side of the hill looked at the hill with a serious expression. I also agree with the head manager. Buffett Banks hasn't participated in the election for the Aden Chamber of Commerce for 25 years. We've focused on the operation and development of the bank, and we rarely participate in the management of the Chamber of Commerce. Some of the new members of the Chamber of Commerce don't even know that Buffett Banks is one of the founders of the Chamber of Commerce. If we don't create momentum in advance, the result might be worse than the Dodges family and the Marquis family. The red-haired middle-aged man sitting at the head of the table on the left side of the hill nodded with a serious expression. Chapter 446. It was a showdown between darkness and light. The surging magic collided fiercely in the air, erupting with terrifying power. When everything fell silent, the darkness and light disappeared. Irina was still standing behind the spring of life, but she had retreated several meters. Her face was slightly pale, and there was blood dripping from the corners of her lips. Her hand was trembling slightly as she held onto her staff, and she was trying very hard not to fall. The green light around her had already disappeared, and the branches of the tree of life had all been withdrawn. The green light around her had dimmed slightly. Borg took a step forward as he looked at Irina and said, "You're very powerful, but it's a pity that you made the wrong choice." Irina had been defeated. All of the elves looked on with different expressions. Borg wasn't being sarcastic. Irina was indeed very powerful at only 30 years of age. Aside from Helena, none of the elves present felt that they could defeat her. Borg had won, but he had most likely sustained severe injuries as well. Everything I've done is what I believe to be the right choice. Irina stood up straight as she looked at Borg with narrowed eyes. But what's in your body? Borg's pupils contracted slightly as he raised his wand again, pointing it at Irina as he yelled, "Then you can go to hell with your choice. Get out of here, princess." Right at this moment, a fully armored guard suddenly drew his sword and charged toward Borg. He raised his long sword above his head with both hands before bringing it down toward Borg. Borg's heart jolted slightly as he pointed his wand toward Irina. A streak of black light shot forth, striking the oncoming guard in the face. The black metal helmet was instantly shattered, and a deep gash appeared on the guard's glabella. His body was sent flying backward before landing with a resounding thump. Blood flowed from his glabella, staining the tattoo on his face. He slowly turned toward Irina with great difficulty and said, Princess, get out of here." As soon as his voice trailed off, he died, but his eyes were still wide open. All of the elves looked on in silence. If a slave were to pick up a knife, a hint of horror welled up in their hearts. "You bastard!" Irina yelled hysterically as she looked at the pool of blood. Her lips were trembling slightly, and the dim golden light on her magic caster's staff began to flicker. This filthy, damned slave. Borg looked at the corpse on the ground with disgust in his eyes as he cracked his neck from side to side. He turned to Irina with a cold smile on his face as he said, "Bastard. Sooner or later, I will kill all those filthy things. I want to see who can save you this time." A hint of fear appeared in all of the elves' eyes as they looked at Borg. He appeared to be quite terrifying in his current state. Elliot and Vincent's eyes met, and both of them were filled with worry. They looked at Helena, who was still calm and silent, as if what happened today had nothing to do with her. Once Irina died, the elf clan would change. Helena was the only one who could stop Borg, but she didn't seem to have any intention of doing so. Therefore, Irina was dead for sure. A sinister smile appeared on Borg's face as he raised his wand, and black light began to shimmer on its tip. Irina's magic caster's staff was also shimmering with faint golden light, but it was unable to gather any energy. "Let me see who dares to kill her right in front of me." Right at this moment, a low voice suddenly sounded in the sky above. A purple-striped griffin swooped down from above, and the trees around it were swept aside by the fierce winds. Wood shavings flew through the air as the massive griffin swooped directly toward Borg. "Alex!" Borg's heart jolted with shock as he waved his wand toward the griffin, and he immediately retreated in an attempt to evade. All of the surrounding elves' expressions changed drastically as they hurriedly scattered in all directions. Borg's reaction wasn't slow, but the griffin was simply too fast. It flapped its wings and snuffed out the black light that had yet to materialize, and a pair of sharp claws that were shimmering with metallic light had already landed on Borg's body. The dozen or so magic barriers that Borg had erected in quick succession were instantly punctured, and the sharp claws punctured Borg's shoulder before hurtling him heavily through the air, where he crashed heavily into a rocky mountain and was imprinted into the stone wall. A few of the elves who had come to their senses hurriedly shielded Borg as they looked on with horrified expressions at the fearsome griffin and the man on its back. All of the elves were in a state of alert and panic, and none of them dared to do anything rash. The griffin circled in the air before landing beside Irina. The man in a black robe and a black and white mask with a heavy sword in his hand jumped down from the griffin's back before wrapping an arm around Irina's waist as he said in a low and seductive voice, "I'm here. So handsome." In the crowd, a certain elven girl acted like a love-struck fool, expressing the feelings of countless elven girls whose eyes were shining. Irina stared blankly at the man who had his arm wrapped around her waist. She didn't know why he had suddenly appeared here. He was clearly completely powerless now, but he still rushed down without any hesitation. He would always be able to come to her side when she needed him the most. In that instant, tears welled up in her eyes. Meg looked at the pale-faced Irina, who was still in a daze, and a hint of sympathy welled up in his heart as he said in a gentle voice, "I'll take you away." Irina came to her senses, and she looked into the pair of clear and gentle eyes beneath the mask, but she shook her head as she said, "I can't go." Meg's brows furrowed in confusion as he asked, "Why?" Irina looked at Meg with a resolute expression as she said, "The Tree of Life needs me, and they also need me. She still has you, but they only have me." Right at this moment, the Tree of Life, which had been silent for a while, suddenly burst forth with a dazzling green light. Then, like an inverted green bowl, it covered the entire cave. Within that green light, there seemed to be a black light struggling to flicker. "Princess!" Alice rushed out of the cave and rushed over in a panic when she saw the pale-faced Irina. Irina looked back at the direction of the cave and the charging Alice. She opened her arms and hugged Meg before whispering in his ear, "Take Bean Sprout and leave. I'll be fine." "All right." Meg nodded slightly before grabbing onto Alice's wrist. He then watched as Irina walked into the light barrier. "Princess. Let go of me. I have to stay with the princess." "Princess." Alice struggled and tried to pounce on Irina, but her wrist was tightly grasped by Meg, and tears flowed uncontrollably from her eyes. Irina walked into the light barrier and entered the cave. The light barrier then shrank, sealing the entrance of the cave. Meg withdrew his gaze and cast a cold glance at the wary elves. His gaze lingered on Helena for a split second before he carried the still struggling Alice onto the griffin's back. "If anything happens to her, I'll bathe the entire elven race in blood." Meg's thunderous voice rang out beside the ears of all of the elves. All of the elves averted their gazes, and Borg, who had just been dragged down from the wall, took a couple of steps back in horror before hiding behind a pale-faced elf. Chapter 447. "Master, all of the gold coins have been transported here from Rodu, but there's a lot of them. Where should we store them?" "All of the magic items you requested have been purchased, and the Magus Tower's magic room has also been dismantled. All of the useful items have been transported here." Outside the magic room, Arthur turned to Crassus with a respectful expression. "The gold coins can be stored on the first floor. I asked Novin for the space on the first floor to store the gold coins a few days ago. All of the magic items can be stored in another magic room, and I'll be able to set up a new magic room for little Amy in a couple of days." Crassus smiled with anticipation in his eyes. "All right." Arthur nodded. He hesitated momentarily before saying, "Master, the people from the Magus Tower have also arrived. They should be at the entrance of Chaos School right now. Aside from challenging Chaos School, they're also here to pay you a visit. Do you want to see them today?" "No. I still have to teach little Amy magic. Besides, I'm sure these guys are up to no good. If they want to challenge Amy, then let them challenge Chaos School first. Amy will represent Chaos School in the competition." Crassus shook his head. A gratified smile appeared on his face as he looked at Amy, who was trying her best to fuse two types of magic together. "All right, I'll pass on your message." Arthur nodded respectfully before departing. "Those old geezers came all the way here to deliver their disciples to me. It would be a shame if I didn't give them a good slap or two," Crassus murmured to himself before entering the magic room. "Principal, do you think we should accept this challenge or not?" In the principal's office, the slightly chubby head of students turned to Novin, who was flipping through a sheepskin tome. "Why not?" Novin asked without even raising his head. "Principal, the Magus Tower and the Advanced Imperial Academy teamed up to challenge Chaos School 2 years ago, and defeated many of our students in the competition. That was a huge blow to Chaos School's reputation, and it also put some pressure on our students. Those Magus Towers must have come prepared. If something like that happens again, it won't be good for Chaos School." The head of students was a little hesitant. "If you refuse to fight because you are afraid of losing, then you will never become a powerful Magus. Have you forgotten this principle, Glinton?" Novin closed the magic book in his hands and put it down. He looked at the dean and calmly said, "Chaos School's reputation is not about being invincible. What I value more is being able to stand up again after a defeat, and then defeat your opponent again. As for the pressure and shadow, if the students are defeated because of a single failure, it means that our education is a failure. We should be the ones reflecting instead of thinking about how to prevent the students from coming into contact with combat." "Yes, it's my fault." Grinton lowered his head in shame. We've accepted the challenge, regardless of whether it's from the Magus Tower or the Advanced Imperial Academy. I want to let the students know that outside of the Chaos Academy, there are people of the same age who are more outstanding than them. They have a higher starting point. If they want to stand at the same height as them in the future, then they have to work harder and not be frogs at the bottom of a well, Novan said with a smile. All right. Grinton nodded. The challenge will be held tomorrow. All of the students and teachers will stop classes for a day to observe. This will give the students a better understanding of magic, and the teachers can see if there are any new developments in the Advanced Imperial Academy. That's all good news, Novan continued. All right, I'll make the arrangements right away. Grinton nodded before quickly departing. At the gate of Chaos School, Grinton looked at Abbott and the Roth Empire official, and said, "Friends from Rodu, I am the head of Chaos School, Grinton. Chaos School has accepted the letter of challenge from the Magus Tower and the Advanced Imperial Academy. The challenge will be held tomorrow, and the specific time will be sent to your residences tonight. I hope this will be a match that will benefit both sides." Abbott nodded at Grinton and said, "All right, I think this will be a match that will benefit both sides. We've come from afar, aren't you going to invite us into your Chaos School? Is this how your Chaos School treats its guests?" Hank glowered at Grinton. Grinton narrowed his eyes at Hank and said in an unhurried manner, "Chaos School is a place for students to attend classes, not a restaurant or hotel. The students are currently in the middle of a class, so outsiders are not allowed to enter. Please only enter tomorrow after receiving an invitation from Chaos School." He had been the head of Chaos School for over 20 years, and had seen all kinds of troublesome students. If this green-haired guy were to fall into his hands, he would definitely shave him bald to prevent him from ruining the school's image. Hank felt a chill run down his spine, and reflexively recoiled. He looked at the bald head of Grinton with a hint of wariness in his eyes. "We respect the rules of Chaos School, but aside from challenging Chaos School, we're also here to congratulate Master Crassus on his acceptance of a disciple on behalf of the Magus Tower. I've heard that he's currently in Chaos School. Would it be possible for us to visit the school and meet Master Crassus?" Abbott asked. Arthur emerged from the school, and turned to Abbott as he said, "Master Crassus said that he doesn't have time to meet you. Both Master Crassus and young Mistress Amy will be present for the match tomorrow, so you can congratulate them then. I wonder if that little brat has the guts to accept the challenge?" Hank asked with a hint of provocation in his eyes. Arthur turned to Hank, and replied, "Master Crassus has said that young Mistress Amy will be representing Chaos School in the match tomorrow. Very good. I'm sure I'll be able to leave her with a good impression." A cold smile appeared on Hank's face. After school in the afternoon, Crassus turned to Amy with a smile, and said, "Little Amy, some little brats will be coming to challenge Chaos School tomorrow morning. However, their main target is most likely to be you. They want to embarrass me, so I want you to represent Chaos School in the match. Do you agree? Beat up bad guys. If anyone wants to embarrass Master Crassus, then Amy will beat them up." Amy clenched her little fists and nodded with a serious expression. Crassus's smile widened as he patted Amy's head, and nodded as he said, "Very good. Let's go back now. Julian should be done with the final steps of the wand, so we'll be able to use it tomorrow." Yay! A wand that can shrink and shrink it will definitely be super awesome. Amy's eyes immediately lit up with elation. Chapter 448. For tomorrow's match, we don't have to worry about the Advanced Imperial Academy. Our Magus Tower has to secure victory against the Chaos School Magic Academy. That's the promise I made during the morale-boosting ceremony. However, you have to remember that the students of the Chaos School are all of different levels of power, so don't hurt them with malicious intent. Otherwise, it'll negatively impact the reputation of our Magus Tower. In the conference room of the Roth Empire's embassy in Chaos City, Abbott looked at the dozen or so young magic casters present with a serious expression. "Auntie, I can destroy all of those Chaos School kids who can't even hold their wands properly, so there's no need to worry. Besides, battles are dangerous to begin with, do we have to go easy on them?" Hank asked with a nonchalant expression. "Yeah, if I cast a spell and I'm worried that they won't be able to handle it, should I cast it or not?" George asked, puzzled. "That's right." All of the other young magic casters also wore nonchalant expressions, clearly not taking Chaos School seriously. "Unleash your full power during the battle, but don't hurt them with malicious intent until the outcome of the battle is clear." Abbott nodded with a serious expression as he said, "Even though all of you are among the most powerful magic casters of your generation in the Magus Tower, don't underestimate Chaos School. In the past, Chaos School has always sent out some powerful magic casters, and there have been 5 matches in which Chaos School emerged victorious. Not underestimating your opponents is a quality that all magic casters should have." "Yes." All of the young magic casters replied earnestly at the sight of Abbott's serious expression. Hank merely gave a lazy response, clearly not taking Abbott's words to heart. He was toying with the green wand in his hand with a bored expression. As a 4th-tier magic caster, he was more than capable of crushing all of the Chaos School students in this cohort. This was something that his master had told him prior to coming here. Abbott nodded at everyone and said, "You've all been traveling for half a month, so you must all be exhausted. Go and get some rest. We still have a battle tomorrow, so you can't go out tonight." "Master Crassus, is that wand really purple?" Amy asked as she followed beside Crassus. "Of course it's true. You'll see it in a while. Why would Master lie to you?" Crassus nodded helplessly. He had been saying the same thing along the way. The little one was too curious. Fortunately, they had arrived at Julian's magic potion shop. "Hello, Your Highness Amy," Charcoal greeted Amy respectfully. "Hi, Amy," Green Bean also greeted her. "Hello, Charcoal," Green Pea. Amy raised her head and waved at the 2 birds. She excitedly walked into the magic potion shop and shouted, "Master Julian. I'm here for the wand. Have you really done it? Little Amy, have you finished school?" Cece was holding a transparent glass vial with a long neck, within which green and red magic potions were slowly fusing. She looked at Amy with a smile. "Yes, big sister Cece, I'm here for the wand. Where's Master Julian?" Amy nodded as she turned to Cece with an expectant look in her eyes. "The wand that Amy is in such a hurry, of course it's done. Take a look and see if you like it." Before Cece had a chance to say anything, Julian's coarse voice had already sounded from inside the room. He slowly walked out with a long black box in his hand. Crassus made his way into the room, and pursed his lips at the sight of the box in Julian's hand. "You're still trying to be mysterious, old man. Hurry up and take it out. Master Crassus." Cece extended a respectful salute toward Crassus. She also looked at the box in Julian's hand with a curious look on her face. A wand that had been crafted by 3 magic casters was really something to look forward to. "Can I open it for you?" Amy's eyes had completely lit up at the sight of the box in Julian's hand, and she turned to Julian with an expectant look in her eyes. "Of course." Julian handed the black box over to Amy. Amy carefully accepted the box before placing it down on a nearby chair. She blew on the box before slowly removing the lid with an expectant look on her face. A burst of purple light erupted from within the box before illuminating the ceiling. This was the figure of a half-elf little girl. It was none other than the image that Amy's had printed on her Ruggiamo bag. Faint purple light was shimmering within the box, and a blackish-purple wand that was around 30 centimeters in length was lying at the center of the box. It was slowly shrinking from bottom to top, and there was a thin section at the center. Its surface was as smooth as jade, and its sleek and streamlined shape gave it a luxurious appearance. There was a dazzling purplish-golden crystal embedded at the end of the handle. There was a hint of gold within the purple, and it resembled a deep eye. The beam of light that had been projected onto the ceiling was coming from that eye. Beneath the purplish-golden eye was a slightly smaller crystal embedded. The surface of the crystal had been cut into many sections, and it was also very dazzling, as if it were a purple diamond. Wow! Amy's mouth gaped open with elation as she stared at the wand in the box. Her bright blue eyes were sparkling, and only after a while did she raise her head to look at Julian with incredulity in her eyes as she asked, Is this really for me? Of course, this is something that we made especially for you, Amy. A smile appeared on Julian's face. Even though he had expended a lot of time and effort to make this wand, he felt like it was all worth it at the sight of Amy's elated expression. What a beautiful wand! Was it made from a purplish-black magic crystal? It's said to be the most compatible wand material for magic, and there are no more than 3 of them on the entire continent. Coupled with the eye of the purplish-golden flame bird. This wand is simply incredible. Cece couldn't help but exclaim in amazement. Little Amy, pick up the wand and recite the incantation that I taught you today. That's the correct way to use this wand, Crassus said with a smile. All right, I'll give it a try. Amy carefully pulled the wand out of the box. The wand was around as thick as a thumb, and it felt warm and cool to the touch. It was very sturdy, but it wasn't heavy in the slightest, and she could wield it with ease. The light projected from the purplish-golden flame bird's eye receded as soon as Amy picked up the wand, and the purplish-golden light receded into the eye, as if there were electric currents converging at the center of the eye. In my name, I unseal this wand. Amy closed her eyes and recited the incantation in her heart. Dazzling purplish-golden light erupted from the purplish-golden flame bird's eye, almost enshrouding Amy within. Chapter 449. The purple wand was around 2 meters tall, and it was more than twice as tall as Amy. There was a fist-sized purple crystal ball at the tip of the wand, and purplish-golden lines intertwined with one another to protect the purple crystal ball. A series of mysterious runes were engraved on the wand, and purple light swirled within the crystal, illuminating the dimly lit magic potion shop. Amy held the wand tightly in her hands as she looked up at the beautiful purple crystal with an adorable expression. Her purple magician robes were just right for her. Her tiny body was holding a tall wand, and there was an adorable contrast between the two. It can even transform into another form. Cece's mouth gaped open, and she was momentarily at a loss for words. As a 7th-tier magic caster, she knew a lot about magic, but she had never seen a magic caster's wand that could transform into a wand that was taller than a grown man. Furthermore, the materials used to construct this wand were also very precious. The wand was constructed from purple sand gold, and was extremely hard. Normally, only high-tier knights would use this material to customize their weapons. Furthermore, purple sand gold was simply too precious. As for the purple crystal at the tip of the wand, if she wasn't mistaken, it was most likely the legendary Oracle Stone. The Oracle Stone contained the secrets of the Norland continent's magic. It was said that it had fallen into Julian's hands several decades ago, and there were rumors that the Oracle Stone could predict the future. Even though it had never been proven, its powerful ability to randomly amplify the effects of magic was something that magic casters had always viewed as a holy relic. There had been several large-scale battles over the Prophecy Stone on the Norland continent, but who would have thought that it would become a part of Amy's wand? It was clear to see just how important Amy was to Julian. As expected, the wand is the most perfect form. This height will allow little Amy to use it until she grows up. Crassus stroked his beard with a pleased expression. His beard had grown quite a bit during the time that he hadn't been tortured by Amy. Amy raised her wand and waved it in front of her. The long wand let out a soft whoosh, and a gust of wind was swept up. The power imbued within her tiny body was not to be underestimated. Amazing, they're both beautiful shades of purple. Amy likes both colors so much. Master Krasu, Master Urian, you two are so awesome. I really love this wand. Amy looked up at the two of them with elation as she waved the wand around in her hands, unable to bear the sight of it. I'm glad that you like it, little Amy. I heard that you're going to be sparring with those brats from the Magus Tower tomorrow. Show them the power of your extreme frost ice flames with your wand, Julian said with a smile on his old-fashioned face. That's not right. I should use my magic staff to knock a big bump on their heads and show them what melee magic is. Krasu chuckled, but there was a hint of hostility in his eyes as he looked at Urian. Little Amy has only been learning melee magic for a month. If she listens to you and uses melee magic, she'll most likely be defeated before she even gets close to them. I won't allow little Amy to take such a risk. Julian glowered at Crassus as the temperature around him abruptly plummeted. Seeing as I'm telling little Amy to do this, I naturally have absolute confidence in her abilities. There's no way those brats will be able to touch little Amy. Melee magic is invincible among people of the same rank, Crassus countered as the temperature around him rose to oppose Julian's frosty aura. Invincible among people of the same rank. Why don't you tell me, in these 100 years, have you ever defeated me once? What do you mean invincible among people of the same rank? Julian asked with a disdainful expression. Why don't you stand still and let me hit you with my wand? You've always been the one running away in every battle. Crassus raised an eyebrow with a displeased expression. The two of them clashed with one another as their auras climbed steadily, looking as if they were going to fight at the slightest provocation. All right, masters, I'll be using both types of magic tomorrow, so please stop arguing. I'm hungry, so I'm going home to eat. Amy stood between the two of them with her wand in hand, and spoke with a serious expression. It was quite clear that her last sentence was the most important one. Julian and Crassus exchanged an indignant glance, but they both withdrew their auras as they looked at Amy, and the atmosphere in the magic potion shop returned to normal. Little Amy, in order to make it easier for you to carry this wand around, I've also custom-made a small version for you. You can chant the spell to shrink the wand, and it'll shrink to its smallest form. That way, you'll be able to carry it in the pocket of your magician robe. Julian turned to Amy with a smile. Really? Amy's eyes lit up upon hearing this, and she immediately chanted the spell twice. Her 2-meter-tall wand shrank back to its normal size before shrinking again to become a tiny wand that was only around 10 centimeters in length. Even in Amy's tiny hands, it still appeared very small and delicate. That's awesome, Master Julian. Now I'll be able to carry my wand with me at all times. Amy looked at the small wand in her hands with elation before placing it into the pocket of her magician robe with a smile, and said, Thank you for the wand, masters, I really like it. All right, I'm going home to eat now. I have to show my wand to father. Go ahead. Julian nodded with a smile. I'm also going to eat now. I'm in a good mood today, so I'll get a braised chicken and rice, Crassus said in a slow voice as he followed Amy out the door. Amy ran out the door and knocked on the door of the restaurant. As soon as she entered, she rushed toward Meg, who was in the kitchen, with elation in her eyes, and yelled, Father, Master Julian and Master Crassus gave me a super awesome wand. Do you want to see it? Of course I'd like to see it if Amy wants to. Meg came out of the kitchen with a plate of spicy grilled fish in his hands. He was very curious about the wand that Crassus and the others had made for Amy. Sally and Yabamiya also turned toward him with curiosity in their eyes. During this period of time, Amy had been constantly talking about the wand, so they were also very curious about what the final product would look like. Look! This is my wand. Amy pulled her little hand out of her pocket, and flipped over her palm to reveal a wand that was around 10 centimeters in length. It's that short. Meg was a little surprised to see the wand in Amy's hand. It can become longer. Amy shook her head as she chanted an incantation in her heart. She then yelled, "Become bigger." Purple light flashed from the wand, and it instantly expanded to around 30 centimeters in length before landing in Amy's hand. Meg, Mia, and Sally were all surprised to see this. It can become even bigger. Amy was clearly very pleased with everyone's reaction, and she yelled again with elation, "Become bigger." A 2-meter-long wand appeared in Amy's hand. Chapter 450. This was also the first time that Meg had seen a wand that could change its size at will. He didn't think that Crassus and Julian would really be able to create a wand that could change its size at will in order to allow Amy to use a wand and a staff at the same time. What an amazing wand, and, "It's so beautiful," Yabamia murmured to herself as she looked at the wand in Amy's hand. This is probably the best wand on the entire Norland continent, right? Regardless of whether it's the materials used to construct the wand or the runes left on it by the 3 great magic casters, this wand is destined to be one of the best wands in the world. Sally was also in awe of the wand. As a 7th-tier magic caster, she was naturally well aware of the benefits that a high-quality wand could bring to a magic caster. Her wand had been given to her by her father, and it had been passed down from a legendary elven magic caster, so it could enhance one's magic by 10%. This 10% enhancement was not to be underestimated. In a battle against a magic caster of the same tier, this 10% enhancement was already enough to tip the scales of victory. Furthermore, as her spiritual power became more powerful, there was still room for improvement. This type of enhancement that came from outside of one's own power was very significant for a magic caster. She had read many legends about the prophecy stone back when she was in the elven race. The prophecies had never been verified, but the ability to randomly increase the power of one's magic was definitely real. However, the randomness was very strong, and even the user had no control over it. Among the past owners of the wand, there had even been people who had used the prophecy stone to unleash spells that were 10 times more powerful than normal. This legendary magic stone was now embedded into Amy's wand, and it was further proof that the prophecy stone was indeed in Julian's possession. Amy shrank her wand again, held it in her hand as she turned to Meg with a curious expression, and asked, "Father, what's the Rui Jingu staff?" "That's also a very legendary wand," Meg replied with a wry smile. He had blurted things out, so it wasn't very easy to explain. "My wand doesn't have a name yet. It can shrink and shrink at will. Can I call it the Rui Jingu staff?" Amy's eyes lit up as she turned to Meg. This name is pretty good." Meg nodded with a smile. Amy's mind worked very quickly, and a mischievous thought suddenly welled up in his mind as he chuckled, "Seeing as the wand already has a name, shouldn't the wand also have a nice password when it transforms?" Back then, the blah 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 Xiao Moxian transformation had resounded through the streets and alleys. Meg still had a deep impression of her. Looking at Amy's adorable expression as she hugged her large magic staff, Meg was looking forward to hearing some interesting commands from her. Password. Amy thought to herself for a moment before looking at the wand in her hand with a serious expression. Wah, wishful wand, transform. Purple light flashed, and the short stick transformed into a beautiful and intricate wand. PFFF, at the side, Yabamia burst into laughter. Sally couldn't hide her smile either. That's pretty good. Meg nodded with a smile. Perhaps the sob was the essence of the entire phrase. It was a blatant act of cuteness. However, he hoped that when she grew up, she would still be able to face the phrase he had set. Meow, Ugly Duckling circled around Amy as it looked up at the wand in her hand with curiosity in its eyes. Amy put away her wand and picked up Ugly Duckling as she turned to Meg, and said, "By the way, Father, Master Crassus said that I'm going to beat up some bad people tomorrow. They seem to be bad people from the Magus Tower, and Master wants me to defeat them all." Magus Tower. Meg raised an eyebrow upon hearing this. He didn't think that he would see that word again so soon. Back when Meg Alex had been ambushed, the Magus Tower had contributed the most. Aside from a few demons who had been used as scapegoats, the rest of the attackers had all been magic casters from the Magus Tower. The elven magic casters had only looked on from the sidelines. Of course, Meg didn't think that the elven race had any good intentions toward him. It was just that many great magic casters and 10th tier demons had gathered at the time, so there was no need for them to take care of him. Even though only a small group of people in the Magus Tower knew about what had happened back then, if news about Amy were to spread back to the Magus Tower, it would most likely attract some attention. However, 3 years ago, Amy had still been a little girl who couldn't speak. She was completely different from how she was now. Furthermore, before leaving Rodu 3 years ago, Meg Alex had faked a suicide, and at the same time, he had almost completely changed his appearance. Just from his appearance alone, no one would be able to recognize that he was Meg Alex. Meg knew that Meg Alex's life was on the minds of many people. Regardless of whether it was the second prince, who had the backing of the Magus Tower, or the first prince, who was becoming more and more influential in the military, neither of them would allow a variable like Meg Alex to appear again. At the very least, the current situation was 50-50. However, if Meg Alex were to appear again, the balance of power in this battle for the throne would change drastically. Regardless of whether it was the first prince or the second prince, neither of them were confident that Meg Alex would stand on their side. This was also the reason why that incident had occurred in Rodu 3 years ago. This was a rare tacit understanding between opponents. People always think that they're smart. In reality, Meg Alex left the military to travel the continent back then precisely because he didn't want to participate in this battle for the throne. He didn't like the warmongering first prince or the hypocritical second prince, so he didn't support them, nor did he oppose them. He only cared about living a comfortable life, and didn't care who became the king. However, there are some idiots who always like to add feet to a snake. If there's a chance in the future, both of them can forget about the throne. Meg thought to himself. He then turned to Amy with a smile, and asked, "Did Teacher Crassus say how many people Amy is going to beat up?" "No." Amy shook her head. She was a little perplexed as she asked, "Aren't we going to beat up as many people as we can?" That's a good idea." Meg nodded with a smile. This little girl was beginning to show her dominance. However, seeing as Crassus was sending Amy into battle, he should be very confident in her abilities. Amy was able to defeat a third-tier magic caster with her fireball magic in the past, so she was already quite powerful among novice magic casters. It shouldn't be a problem for her to deal with some little guys from the Magus Tower. Chapter 451. After Meg and the others had finished their dinner, it was time for business. Amy sat behind the counter with a blueberry ice cream in her hands, and slowly licked it. Ugly Duckling was lying on her lap, looking up at the ice cream in Amy's hands and licking its lips with its little tongue. The introduction of ice cream had enriched the desserts available to the customers. Not only were they popular with children, but they were also very popular with adults. In particular, after eating the spicy grilled fish, the spicy sensation was instantly alleviated, and the feeling of jumping into an icy spring from a pool of lava was simply too exhilarating. "I want an ice cream, blueberry flavored." "I'll get that first, then a medium spicy grilled fish, medium spicy grilled fish." After the grilled fish, I'll get a chocolate-flavored ice cream. Vivian was still wearing a set of loose men's clothing as she sat down with Yabamiya. This was a combination that she had come up with. The sweet and sour blueberry ice cream would be the appetizer, followed by the sweet chocolate ice cream after the spicy grilled fish. It was simply perfect. All right, please wait a moment. Yabamiya nodded with a smile before making her way to the next customer. TSK. A man who can cook such delicious food really is irresistible to women. Thank God I'm not an ordinary woman. Vivian looked at the little girl who was staring at Meg in the kitchen, and murmured to herself as she raised an eyebrow. Her gaze then fell on Gloria, who was sitting in the corner, and her eyes lit up. Since when did such a beauty appear in Chaos City? Vivian was a little surprised to see this. This little girl's looks, figure, and disposition were all exceptional, and she was a complete beauty. As someone who was bored enough to pay attention to the Chaos City Beauty Rankings board all year round, Vivian was very sensitive to new beauties in Chaos City. This little girl's looks and disposition were at least in the top 5, but she wasn't very famous. However, even though this little girl was sitting with her back straight, she was constantly sneaking glances toward the kitchen. However, she would quickly withdraw her gaze, and repeat the same actions over and over again. Vivian couldn't help but find this rather amusing. Looks like it's not just ordinary women. Even such a beauty can't escape the temptation of delicious food. However, this boss seems to be quite upright. He shouldn't casually provoke customers, right? If he dares to mess around, no matter how delicious the food is, I will never let him off. Vivian thought to herself as she looked at Meg, who was busy in the kitchen. The suede has almost no customers. Many of the fabrics stored in the warehouse have become moldy and damaged due to poor storage. The service attitude of the staff is also somewhat bad. Now we can't even break even. How can we achieve a profit in a month and achieve results that grandfather approves? Gloria thought to herself worriedly. She frowned and leaned against the chair behind her. She sighed and said to herself, even though I didn't do anything for the whole day, I still feel so tired. Your sweet tofu pudding and Yangzhou fried rice. Yabamiya placed a tray of food in front of Gloria. He looked at her with a smile, and said, the restaurant just released a new ice cream today. Perhaps you should give it a try. Its sweet and refreshing flavor can dispel all of your worries and worries. Gloria initially wanted to refuse, but her gaze fell on Amy, who was happily munching on her ice cream. She hesitated momentarily before turning to Yabamiya, and asked, is that ice cream? That's right. Amy is holding a blueberry ice cream. There are a total of 4 flavors to choose from, so you can choose according to your preferences. Yabamiya nodded with a smile. He then opened the menu for Gloria and flipped to the ice cream page. Blueberry, chocolate, matcha, vanilla. Could it be that it's made from a fragrant herb? Gloria's curiosity was piqued. She closed the menu and turned to Yabamiya with a smile, and said, please give me a vanilla ice cream, I want to eat it right now. Sure, please wait a moment. Yabamiya nodded with a smile. He then quickly walked into the kitchen, and soon returned with a light yellow vanilla ice cream. He handed it to Gloria, and said, your vanilla ice cream. Thank you. Gloria accepted the ice cream and nodded slightly. Her eyes lit up as she looked at the vanilla ice cream in her hand. There was a light brown cone wrapped in a thin paper shell, and it appeared to have been baked out of flour. There were 2 light yellow snowballs on top of the cone, one on top of the other on top of the other. It was still autumn, but these 2 snowballs looked as if they had been kneaded from real snow. Furthermore, they were exceptionally smooth. The faint fragrance of vanilla mixed with the sweet aroma of milk wafted toward her, giving her a refreshing feeling. Are we going to lick it? Gloria looked at Amy, who was licking the ice cream with relish. She hesitated momentarily before also licking the snowballs with the tip of her pink tongue. The ice and snow slowly melted on the tip of her tongue, and the fragrance of grass and milk spread through her mouth. The cool sensation made her tongue feel as if it had lost all sensation in that instant. Gloria only felt a special sense of pleasure emanate from the tip of her tongue, and her eyes were already narrowing involuntarily as a sweet sensation spread through the air. In her daze, she felt as if she could see a figure in a pristine white chef's suit slowly making his way toward her. There was a warm smile on his handsome face, and he was looking at her with an affectionate gaze. He raised a hand and gently caressed her chin. She felt as if an electric current were flowing from his hand, and she was completely entranced. Phew! Only after a long while did Gloria slowly open her eyes. She looked at the ice cream in front of her, and then at the busy figure in the kitchen, and all of the frustration in her heart seemed to have been completely dispelled in an instant. Perhaps all of her troubles weren't that difficult. At the very least, she was able to enjoy the delicious food here and watch Mag cook in the kitchen, and her heart was at peace. You can do it, Gloria. How can you give up on the promise you made and the words you said just because of a little difficulty? A smile appeared on Gloria's face, and she gently licked another mouthful of ice cream. She closed her eyes and watched as he approached her. Even though this was just a little bit of her imagination, she was still very satisfied. The two snowballs were quickly devoured by her. Her teeth gently cracked open the eggshell, and it was crunchy and delicious. It hadn't softened in the slightest due to the melting of the ice cream, and the aroma of the egg was intermingled with the aroma of milk. Chapter 452. As soon as this idea appeared in Gloria's mind, she couldn't get it out of her head. She had spent the entire day thinking about how to turn Swade's losses into profits. Even Mars, who had been by the president's side for over 20 years, said that he would need some time to do some research before coming up with a solution. There were very few ready-made clothes on the market at the moment. Customers usually had to buy fabric first, and then go to a tailor for customization. That way, the clothes would fit better, but it would also take a longer time to complete the final product. Now, Gloria had an idea. Could they choose a style of clothing first, then mass-produce clothes of different sizes, and sell them in the shops? Customers could choose to try them on and buy clothes that fit their own size, thereby eliminating the need to take measurements and customize the clothes. Not only would that save customers time, but it would also save the shop's manpower and resources. Even though Gloria didn't have much contact with other people in the past, she had read a lot of books at home. Not only did she read the family Moraton's collection of books, her father had also brought her many books from Chaos School. Those books had accompanied her through all of her boring times, and allowed her to learn a lot of knowledge and broaden her horizons. She hadn't told her grandfather that she wanted to compete with Hill Buffett on a whim. Instead, she wanted to find an opportunity to use all of the things she had learned. As for whether she could beat Hill, that wasn't actually the most important thing to her. Perhaps I could go back and discuss this with Mr. Mars first. He knows the Chaos City market better than me. If it's feasible, then I'll come back and work with Mr. Meg, Gloria thought to herself. She wasn't in a hurry to find Meg. Instead, she looked at Amy, and thought back to all of the little clothes that she had worn. She nodded as she said, Amy has so many styles of clothes, and they're all very unique and adorable. If Mr. Meg is willing to design clothes for Lawn Dye, then perhaps he can lead a new trend in Chaos City. Apart from cooking, Mr. Mag has amazing abilities in many other areas as well. Gloria was full of praise for him from the bottom of her heart. He was gentle and refined, a super chef, a fashion designer. What a mysterious man. She really wanted to know what he couldn't do. I want an ice cream, blueberry flavored. I want a chocolate ice cream. Due to the fact that the ice cream was machine-made, Meg only needed to mix the ingredients, so there was no shortage of ice cream. Compared to the tofu pudding, the battle between the sweet and savory flavors was far less intense. Due to the fact that there were only 2 ice creams available, many people would choose to try both flavors at the same time. Different flavors of ice creams brought about different experiences, but they were all equally delicious. As such, everyone was looking forward to tasting the other 2 flavors as well. Meg took some time to ask the Crassus about the competition tomorrow, and it was similar to what Amy had said. The challengers were the junior disciples of the Magus Tower. Mr. Mac, you don't have to worry. With me here, no one can hurt little Amy. Besides, no one would dare to hurt my precious disciple. Crassus waved his hand at Meg. With your words, I'm not worried anymore. Meg nodded with a smile. He hesitated momentarily before asking, by the way, can I take a look at the competition tomorrow? You say you're not worried, but I'm actually not at all. Alright, Mr. Mac, if you're worried, then you can come to the school with me tomorrow and see how little Amy crushes all of them. Crassus smiled in a resigned manner. Thank you, Mr. Mac. Meg was elated to hear this. He was worried about Amy, but he also wanted to see the Magus Tower disciples. With Crassus' approval, he should be able to enter Chaos School tomorrow. Thus, the restaurant's opening hours finally came to an end. Sally and Yabamiya left after cleaning up the restaurant. Meg turned over the sign on the door and prepared to take Amy and Ugly Duckling to bed. Father, Xiaomi still wants to eat another ice cream, okay? Amy was usually very sleepy at this time, but she was very energetic today. She pouted at Meg, and her pointy little ears twitched. Meow, Ugly Duckling's eyes also lit up, and it extended its 2 little white paws toward Meg as if to say, I want one too. Meg's heart almost melted at the sight of Amy's adorable expression, and he almost nodded. However, after thinking about it for a moment, he shook his head, and said, No, you can't. It's already night time, and you're about to go to bed. You can't have ice cream at this time. Otherwise, you'll get a stomachache. But I really want to eat ice cream. I just want one vanilla ice cream. I'm begging you, Father. Her big blue eyes were bright, and her pointy ears were drooping. It was as if she would burst into tears if Mag were to refuse her. She looked up at Mag with her big, bright blue eyes, and her pointy ears drooped as if she would burst into tears if Mag were to reject her. Meow, Ugly Duckling also latched onto Meg's apron with a pleading expression. Meg looked down at the 2 little guys, and he couldn't bring himself to refuse. After hesitating momentarily, he asked internally, System, if I give Amy ice cream now, will it negatively affect her body? According to the system's analysis, Amy's constitution is quite strong, so ice cream shouldn't cause any adverse effects under normal circumstances. However, she's already eaten 3 ice creams today, so the system suggests that she shouldn't eat too much ice cream. Otherwise, it'll be detrimental to her health, the system quickly replied. So you're saying that I can have another ice cream now? Meg asked again. There are risks associated with eating any food. According to incomplete statistics, there are no less than 1,000 people who die from eating jelly every year, and there are also many who die from drinking water. As such, the system can't guarantee that there won't be any side effects, the system replied in a serious manner. There's a chance that you'll be crushed to death by a pie falling from the sky. Meg rolled his eyes internally. Seeing as the system was telling him not to eat too much ice cream, then it shouldn't be a problem to have another ice cream. Looking at the pitiful expressions on the 2 little guys' faces, he really couldn't bring himself to refuse. He patted Amy's head and said, All right, but you 2 can only eat 1 ice cream. 1 snowball each, and Amy can eat the eggshell. Yay! Thank you, Father. Amy jumped up with elation, and her pointy little ears twitched with elation. Meow, Ugly Duckling also meowed excitedly. After tasting ice cream the day before, it had also fallen in love with this type of cold and delicious food. Meg went into the kitchen to make a vanilla ice cream with only one snowball for Amy. He then placed the other snowball onto a small plate and placed it on the floor. The two little guys happily finished their ice cream before following Meg upstairs to wash up and go to bed. System, upgrade the restaurant. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.